across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening to you. It is Thursday. That means you're 2 days away from the weekend. That is right. I've always liked a Thursday. I don't know why. There's something about a Thursday that kind of feels... It's always quite a nice chewy day. Things happen. It's like that sort of bit. Friday, things stop happening. It slows down for the weekend, but it's almost like this sort of crescendo of the week is a Thursday. And, you know, when I was at university, Thursday was always the night you go, out, out. Don't know why that is, but I'd say when I was in politics, actually, living in Brussels, Thursday was the night to go out, out, before the MEPs went back to their countries and all the staff did, well, who knows what. Yeah, it's a good day, isn't it, a Thursday? I hope yours has started better than Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's, right? Oh, my gosh. What do you make of this? It's almost like, I just feel with news at the moment, so much is going on that I feel quite desensitised to all of it, that at one point you would think the former prince, the late Queen's son, being arrested from his royal home, the police raiding 2 royal residences, currently no doubt sitting in a solitary prison cell or being grilled in an interview room. And who knows, could he end up in prison? It's quite an astonishing thing. The Americans cannot believe it. They're like, wow, what is going on in Britain? But I sort of feel a little bit, I don't know, like it's expected or something. Anyway, of course, it is sort of a big story rippling throughout the world, quite frankly. What happens next? Is this going to affect the monarchy? My view is no. Of course, people who don't like the monarchy, Republican, whatever they're called, Republic, that's it, the pressure group, we use this as a reason to say, well, they're all rotten. This is a product of privilege. They shouldn't be in these positions. It's such an outmoded model, etc. I kind of feel most of us go, yeah, he's dodgy, isn't he? But it doesn't affect the rest of them. We can all have a dodgy family member. Not that I do, mine are great. But we can all have a dodgy family member, can't we? I just think it's all quite Renaissance, really. You know, it's like taking the royal family back to the origins. Maybe we'll have some sort of, horseback battle in the middle of Windsor Great Park with, like, lances and jousting. Well, like I was saying to Kev, maybe they'll suddenly repurpose the Tower of London to be the royal prison it was always supposed to be. I may jest, but this is very serious in terms of what did he know? Why was he giving it to Epstein? Why did Epstein want it? What was it used for? Because this is about our national interest. This is highly classified information that he was playing fast and loose with for his own purposes. And astonishingly, some of these revelations now about Sarah Ferguson. In fact, that one of these leaked emails says that she had been in receipt of, lifestyle sponsorship for 15 years from Jeffrey Epstein, and other emails suggesting that the princesses, Eugenie and Beatrice, kind of knew anyway. They were old enough to say, like, well, mummy, maybe you should just say he served his time in prison, he's a changed man. It's like, oh, gosh, we're not going to have any left. It'll just be William and Kate, won't it? But I think, the right thing has happened. How constitutionally significant is this going to be? I don't know. But let's ask Philip Kisley. As he is the senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, he might have some idea. Philip, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Alex. How are you?
I am OK. Look, I'm wearing black in mourning for the monarchy.
Me too.
Hey, I love it when me and my guests match. Although I don't think... I don't see this. I think it's, awful for Andrew, but deserved, quite frankly. Arrested on his birthday, rattling around in some prison cell in Oxfordshire right now. But... the law is not above anybody, or nobody's above the law, sorry. So what's coming to pass is what should come to pass.
I think, actually, curiously enough, I think in the long run, I think this will do the royal family a favour. I think there's a difference between the monarchy and the royal family. And we've had problems with this royal family. And there is a very specific and horrible problem around him. He seems to be not only, potentially, allegedly been breaking the law, it's potentially, allegedly treasonous. He's just a horrible, nasty, overprivileged human being as well, so it seems. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to separate the rest of them from him, and particularly William and Kate. And I think that they will come out of it much better. There will be a difference. There will be a discernible difference between them, their family, their struggles. She's been ill, and a general sense of decency that pervades them, versus the horrible, nasty, monstrous stuff that has surrounded him for decades now. I mean, just when I was listening, I heard the news this morning, and you know, it's unprecedented in modern history. This is unprecedented in modern history. The only thing I was just looking before, the only thing I can think of that comes even 100 miles to it was the Baccarat scandal in the 1890s, which was just about cheating at cards and you know, and society and etiquette and all of that kind of thing. This is a whole completely different ball game. But as you were just saying before, yeah, I'm a bit desensitized to it as well. But I also I first heard this morning. I was at King's Cross Station and I was coming up here. I've been doing stuff yesterday and the day before in different towns, and I just feel a sense of foreboding. It's not just this stuff; it's all the other stuff that's happening around the political right and all of that kind of thing. That, you know, you've been attacked and all of this kind of stuff.
Don't I know it?
No, but it all just seems really horrible. And I have this particular sense of foreboding that everything's falling apart. And this is kind of emblematic of all of that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Do you know, it's funny, I had a sense when the late Queen passed away, I kind of felt like that was the beginning of some sort of horrible change. Like she was some important keystone culturally that kept us all together. And no, you know, you're right. It's at the moment, Britain is losing its identity. It's teetering on the brink of something really quite ugly. People are becoming emboldened to say things, think things, do things that they never would have done even 2 years ago. And I do understand that every force sort of invites an equal and opposite force, and arguably the extreme left have dominated for too long. They have wreaked so much devastation upon the country. But it's how we now handle this in the years going forward. Let's go back to how the royal family should handle this. I always get the impression about Prince William is, for how gentle he looks and nice, and I used to do Sea Rescue and here's the Earthshot Prize and all of that. I get the impression he's a hardliner who doesn't take any rubbish from anybody. Didn't take rubbish from his brother. I get the impression that for a long time he's been wanting Andrew to be banished from the family, not to be anywhere near them. It seems to me as if they've decided the princesses can't be associated with them as well anymore. And so I do think that, you know, I'm actually kind of excited for the day that William becomes king, because, like I said, for all of his cuddliness, I don't think he's that woke. I understand that he's actually become quite Christian since his wife was diagnosed with cancer, and I kind of feel like he will be a little bit more forthright about dealing with crises than perhaps Charles currently is.
I think it's the pair of them. I think it's Kate as well. I think they understand the firm. You know what I mean? I think they understand what's expected of them, and they understand the notion of duty and responsibility. And it feels to me that certainly Andy doesn't understand any of those things, and Harry as well doesn't. It's all about what's in it for me and entitlement. But I think, just going back to, you know, the future king, I think it does look reasonably good, and I too was thinking about when the Queen died, and it almost felt today, it almost felt that when she did go, she was that linchpin, wasn't she, that held in a way that contract between past, present and future. She was even though she was the king and she was queen and she was surrounded by opulence, there was something small c conservative about her as well. She was a symbol of small c conservatism and Englishness, which isn't you know, extreme and about largesse and opulence. Even though she was the queen, there was something about her. I'm not explaining it very well, but there was something there.
There were. We all knew it. The whole world knew it. You know, some of the testimonies that came in from around the world. You know, the two that stick in mind was Justin Trudeau. Not that I'm a big fan of his, but he sort of
No,
said,
God, no.
"I loved her so," and Macron said, "To you, she was your queen." To the rest of the world, she was the queen. And I thought Macron put that beautifully that day. And I hate to speak ill of our late queen because I adore her. I have a big picture of her on my wall at home from when she was a mechanic during World War II. And she's in her uniform, bonnet up on a Jeep, you know, spanners. I love it. I think it's so inspirational. But people might criticise her, saying, well, she sort of mollycoddled Andrew. You know, people said that that was her favourite son, that she didn't sort of keep him in check. She let him get away with bad behaviour. She protected him when perhaps she should have seen which way the wind was blowing and been a little bit stricter with him.
Yeah, but it's easy to say that. You know, we're talking about the royal family here.
Yeah.
And the key word is family. And she's the parent. And sometimes we do have blind spots, you know, as far as our children are concerned. And we do have shortcomings. And I can completely understand that. The difficulty that we have in analysing all of this stuff and the difficulty that the royal family have day to day is that they are, you know, the public institution, but they are also private. They're also people. They have relationships. They have fallouts with each other. And it must be incredibly difficult in this day and age of social media and intrusion on a level that we've never seen before to be able to cope with all of this stuff. I mean, this sheer chaos that Andrew has wrought today on the rest of his family. I keep thinking about that, and this is I'm obviously really soft, but I keep thinking about them as a family. I keep thinking about the king. I keep thinking about half of them are ill. You know, some of them have had cancer and all the rest of it. How is that going to impact on them? But I keep thinking about, you know, the general public as well. And we deserve so much more than this character, this you know, this fool, you know, who's thrown everything away.
I mean, this is it. When Meghan Markle besmirched the great institution of the royal family, which is our head of state, and is the cultural glue that binds us together, and it actually, I think, serves as, you know, it does a great ambassadorial role for Britain on the world stage as well. We had no truck with her dragging the reputation of our royal family through the mud, and now we're faced with this. But what I'm trying to ascertain is, you know, when you look at royal families around the world at the moment, in Belgium, I believe the King of Belgium has been sort of, you know, been forced to have a DNA test and recognise a love child he always claimed wasn't his. There's another royal family where someone's stepson has been arrested for rape. There's another royal family, I think it's a Scandinavian one, where the princess went off with some hippy-dippy faith healer who's a bit balmy, and that caused a lot of issues. You know, royal families are sort of doing what royal families historically have always done, which is not always behave very well. And I wonder if this reflects on Britain. Whether people look at the United Kingdom and go, well, that's really gross, that's horrible, it's a corrupt, nasty little island full of a horrible royal family, or whether they sort of look at it the way that I kind of look at it, which is, you know, most of the royal family are good eggs and do a good job. He's a black sheep, he's horrible. But in a way, it's almost like our royal family was the precursor for the Kardashians. We invented, you know, a family at the centre of reality television, if you will. And we've been through this stuff before, you know, all the furore over the affair of the King and Camilla, the alleged affair, over who killed Princess Diana. You know, this isn't the first time that the world has been sort of fixated on, you know, issues emanating from the House of Windsor.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, and I think there's something else as well. We're heading into a new era. Well, we're in a new era now. It's 2026, so we're firmly in the 21st century, which is very different to the 20th century. And I think most people are thinking about the role of the royal family in the 21st century, you know, which was in the 20th century, which was different to the role of the royal family in the 19th century. So this is changing all the time. And I don't think we've quite got the model yet. The model will emerge, the model will solidify when William becomes king, and that will set the template, I think, for the rest of the century. But what we're doing at the moment is we're struggling to understand. I think, if you think about Andrew, his heyday was the 1980s. His heyday was real heroicism in the Falkland Islands, and I think he's struggled after that because he simply had no role, and I think he represents, I suppose, the 20th century, and I think that will quietly just go away, and we'll look forward and to thinking about how the royal family remodels itself, represents itself, and reworks itself for the 21st century and the future, because this is about the contract of generations. It's a family. It represents us. It represents what Britishness is. We revolve around families, and that Burkean contract, in a way, that past, present, and future, is much more complex than we think it is. They represent our heritage. They're a very definite visual sign of Britishness, heritage, and greatness. They need to take that along with them, but of course they do need to change and adapt to new environments.
I tell you what, though, if I was advising the royal family in terms of PR, which thankfully I'm not, because I don't think I'd be that good at it, but what I would suggest to them is get Princess Anne out. Everyone loves Princess Anne. She's no nonsense. She's hardline, and there she is with the same hairstyle she's had for 1,000 years, on a horse, in a Land Rover, scruffing about in a Barber jacket, doing what for? Just wheel out a bit more Anne. I don't think they use her enough, and I think that she's a perfect antidote to Andrew. And it's so funny, isn't it?
She's the polar opposite, isn't she?
Right. And this is the funny thing. Both in William's generation and Charles' generation, it's the younger brother who's had the issue with not, being in line to the throne, not being the one who's going to inherit. And, maybe the ego just can't handle it. Whereas the women are just like, oh, whatever, let's just get on with getting on, shall we? I mean, I like that lot. I like Anne, I like the Tyndalls. I'd say more of them, please, because I think they do represent the sort of humble, earthy Britishness that the royal family always has done, whereas Andrew represents, like you said, like the profligate waste, privilege, entitlement, all the things that are bad, if we're sort of looking at it through the angle of a classist angle, looking at the royal family, an elitist angle.
I think, sorry, just very quickly, I think there's another thing as well. I think what Anne represents is stoicism.
Exactly.
We desperately need that now.
Oh yeah, she's a mother's daughter. I love that woman. Get her out. Right, let's take a short break. When we come back, I cannot wait to see what more emerges from this Chagos Islands scandal. I've been on this for a while. I've written a big Substack on it, looking at the cartel of lawyers that surround our Prime Minister and how much influence they have, given that they are not elected. Well, there seems to be a drip feed of information now coming from Guido Fawkes as to who might have profited, whether there was a conflict of interest. And seriously, keep your eyes on this one, because I have a feeling if it emerges that things have not been done properly, and I'm not talking about whether it's a good idea and whether America likes it, I'm talking about the coterie that surrounds our Prime Minister, potentially garnering a lot of money out of a very dodgy deal with, frankly, hostile states. That, my friends, is something that could bring down the Prime Minister. That's what I believe. We're going to be talking about that straight after this.
Good morning,
Thank you for
Julia.
joining
Nice
us.
to be back with you again.
Well, I mean, again, extraordinary circumstances. It's the former prince's 66th birthday. He's lost his HRH, he's lost his prince, he's lost his dukedom, lost all his titles, lost his big fancy house in Royal Lodge in Windsor, banished to the Sandringham estate. What was your first reaction when you heard that he had actually been arrested?
Well, at long last, is my reaction. I've been calling out for this, frankly, for nearly 6 years, ever since the allegation emerged.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, what is going on with the Chagos Islands? It's sort of like following a bar of soap around the shower at the moment, because the deal was done. And Trump said, yes, that's fine, because Mandelson had, sold him that it was a great idea and the only deal that could be done. And then people went, maybe Nigel Farage, I get the impression initially, to Scott Bessent at Davos. It's not a good idea, They're basically giving it to Mauritius for no good, solid legal reason. And then you're not going to be able to keep nuclear weapons there. And then the Chinese are going to be able to come sniff around your military base. So this got back to Trump, and he's like, no, don't like it. Then, all of a sudden, something else seemed to happen, and he seemed to go, OK, fair enough. That's the best he can do. It's going to have to happen. The next thing we know, it's like, no, absolutely not. Do not give those Chagos Islands away. This will be a big mistake. Of course it's a big mistake. And there's a very, I would argue, not that I know anything about international law, there is very thin ice when it comes to this being legally sound. When you dig into this deeper and you look at the way that it appears that Russia and China were consulted on whether they liked the wording of this deal, because they've got an interest in maintaining a grip on the assets that they currently have, such as, let's say, Crimea to Russia, or if China decided to go and take Taiwan. So apparently it's been suggested that the legal text was deliberately written to instead talk about decolonization, wokeism. Now, all of this was done by one Philip Sands, KC, who we know is a friend of the Prime Minister. We know that they are interconnected through their barristers' chambers. They're affiliated. Also, there's the fingerprints of Lord Hermer on this. We know they've been friends for a long time. We know their barristers' chambers are interconnected and affiliated. Then, of course, there's one Peter Mandelson, who, well, it's been revealed, hasn't it, that he might have had improper relationships with people in China who are interconnected with this Chagos deal and affiliated, and he would have been the ambassador who was then made to sell this prospect to Donald Trump. And so it all looks very murky to me. Follow the money on this one, because it's been alleged that £8.3 million was the price tag for the consultancy for the Mauritian government that anybody who worked on this over the past decade would get a slice of, including Mr. Philip Sands, KC, who also, allegedly, I understand, became a Mauritian citizen. And one part of this deal where we pay Mauritius for those islands is the amount of money that we're giving to Mauritius means it can become a tax haven, that no one in Mauritius, no Mauritian citizen, has to pay any tax. Well, that's very nice if you've been given citizenship and if you've been paid 8 million odd quid as well. And it happens to be very useful if your mate is also the Prime Minister who can make sure this deal goes through. This, to me, looks like a massive scandal waiting to blow up. Which begs the question, what on earth is Sir Keir Starmer thinking by turning around today and saying to America, OK, if you're going to launch an attack against Iran, which purportedly they might be doing Saturday. And remember, this is a terrorist-sponsoring evil regime that has just massacred in cold blood tens of thousands of people trying to stand up against this tyrannical regime, and are trying to develop nuclear weapons, want to wipe out Israel, call us little Satan, America, big Satan. They're not our friends. They're not good people. How on earth does Sir Keir Starmer think it's a good idea to say to America, who has an air base in Fairford, where they leave their big bombers to do strategic attacks, you can't fly your planes out of Britain if you're going to bomb Iran? Why are you taking Iran's side? Phil, this government, every single turn astonish me because they constantly seem to be in hock with our mortal enemies. Apart from shouting the word Russia and talking tough against Putin, which is their favourite little word, you know, every time anyone calls them into question, they've cozied up to China. Now it seems they're doing Iran's bidding. The EU has prescribed the IRGC. Britain? No. Like, what is going on? Why is this Prime Minister and this government seemingly enabling hostile nations?
Well, I mean, I've just been looking at this. I mean, first of all, let's just think about the cost. We're talking 35 billion here, right? Okay. It's eye-watering. And they said, oh, no, it's only going to be 100 million a year. Okay, well, that's all right. Then fine, brilliant, you know. But I keep thinking about this, and the word Watergate keeps coming into my mind because I think this is, do you know what I mean? I think it's going to unravel and unravel and unravel. And it feels as though there are motivations, obviously, that we don't know about. If Herma's involved, if Sands is involved, you know, all of these nasty little people that have all sorts of agendas which are fundamentally anti-British, okay? I think if they're involved, then this is going to work badly for us. But also, I have no confidence whatsoever with Keir Starmer on the world stage, dealing with great big hostile nations like Russia, America, who are becoming hostile because he's just so bad, and China. But I think there's something more as well. This messing around and this kind of vagueness around Iran, I'm really worried about, because I think that relates as well to domestic politics and what's going on in this country, and keeping a lid on what could possibly turn into a civil war if we do not get our control of the Islamist lobby in this country. So I think there are so many things happening here, but I think, look, I started talking about the Chagos Islands. When did it happen? About a year ago, a bit longer, okay? No one in this country had ever heard of the Chagos Islands before. Like, you know, 99.99% had never heard of the Chagos Islands. Okay. Now everybody does, and everybody will do in future, because this is going to be massive, and this is just another thing that is going to come back to haunt Keir Starmer.
I think so. No, this is it. And again, it is a really terrible reflection on our supine, useless legacy media, who never inquire into anything when it comes to this Prime Minister, even when it's glaringly obvious. There are serious, very grave allegations that need to be followed up. And they just sort of go, oh, well, that's fine. Oh, isn't he lovely because it's left wing? And I'm thinking, if this was any other government, if this was Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage, there would have been in-depth investigations into these lawyers. Who aren't elected, remember? Lord Herma was not elected when he was made Attorney General. No. He was bestowed a lordship in order to do that role. Now, that is the highest legal office in the land. Now, normally the Attorney General's job is to legally say to the government, right, we want to change this legislation, and he looks at it and goes, like, this is the way it can be done. I get the impression it might be role reversal, and that when Starmer wants to do something, he goes, no, that's not how it's going to happen, this is how it's going to be. I feel like Starmer might be the minor party when it comes to this cartel of lawyers. I really do. Maybe that's just a gut feeling. But it really does need to be looked at. And yeah, Watergate, it's funny because that's what I keep thinking. There's something here that does not add up. I mean, Brian in Spain's just messaged, Alex, this Chagos deal has the stench of corruption. We need to know exactly who is directly receiving money and who is indirectly receiving money. Correct. Hello, Alex and Phillips from Margaret. Starmer will give the Chagos Islands away and think nothing of it. I think he has a very stubborn, spiteful streak. I think that the Chagos stuff has gone so far. Promises have no doubt been made to China. I mean, there's all sorts of things involved in this that we don't know about, that I feel like Starmer is stuck now. I feel like he can't undo this because he's clearly made promises to other people. More stuff could come out. If he turns around and says no, and people who know a thing or two about this deal decide to squeak, I really think that this one could blow up.
I think it will do. And if you think back when this, again, as I said before, when we first started talking about the Chagos Islands, we were talking about imperialism. We were talking about kind of reparations almost. It was that woke narrative, wasn't it? It was attacking our own history as an empire. And I thought, at the time, and I mentioned it on various platforms, no, it's really not about that. It's about so much more than that. But for me, that was just like everything else. We have all of this nonsense, don't we, which is drenched in identity politics. But what we've got to start doing, and commentators really must, and journalists really must start doing, is pushing to what's really going on.
Exactly. Don't get drawn into the silly...
Yeah,
the silly arguments. What is the real stuff that we're ignoring when we're, having some stupid debate about the word someone has used or something like that?
I suppose it's a few things, right? It's where's the money coming from, and where is it going to? Who's handling it? What's happening to it in that process? And where is the power here? Because when I see Keir Starmer, when I see David Lammy, and my God, when I see Angela Rayner, I just feel as though the power isn't in their hands. No. And this is our prime minister, this is our deputy prime minister. I want these people to be in control, and they aren't.
They're not. And I find it utterly breathtaking that the government's turned around and said to America, you cannot fly military aircraft out of Fairford, the US Air Base. Why? That is where the bombers took off during the Gulf War. That is where America keeps their big aircraft, basically, because it's a long way to fly something from America over to the Middle East at short notice. They have air bases in Qatar. They have air bases in Erbil, in northern Iraq, in Kurdistan, as it is otherwise known. That's normal, to have air bases so you can put your assets in striking distance of something. And we all know that Iran is extremely evil. We all know that Trump is trying to sort this out through negotiation. We all know that regime has just killed tens of thousands of people and sponsors terrorism. And I cannot see the motivation. I cannot understand the rationale of the UK banning America from using that airbase. When people go, Trump is a threat to NATO, Trump is a threat to NATO, Trump is a person trying to save NATO. The threat to NATO is coming from Europe. It's exactly this sort of mad anti-Atlanticist behaviour which terrifies me.
It's basic diplomacy, right? It's looking after our own interests, and you have to say that Iran is a massive threat, and it's not just this. It's not just this that's being covered up. We are the heritage media, the mainstream media are telling lies about what's happening in Iran. They are marginalizing all of that stuff. And I keep coming back to this question of why are they doing that? Because if you start talking about that, and if you start digging deep onto that, like we have done on this channel, okay, if you start doing that, then you have to think about why a nation has rejected radical Islamism, okay? And what are the consequences of radicalist people affected by radical Islamism in this country, which is all of us, especially the Jewish community, and women and children. And you have to start asking those questions. Now, all of these questions are really difficult. They are going to cause so many terrible waves because our society is riven with this stuff. It feels like it's almost as though, well, we won't deal with this big stuff because it's going to cause ructions here. That is really frightening, because this is the world stage. This is power. This is global power we're talking about.
Oh, and the tail constantly wags the dog in this country now. Although I do wonder, because there had been bits and bobs in newspapers about Fairford as an airbase going to be used by the Americans. Now, I live down the road from there. I know Fairford very well. I've been going to the military air show there every year since I was born, basically. And now it's my next door neighbour almost. And so two things sprung to mind. One is, well, Iran has now developed a long-range missile that wouldn't reach America, but it could reach us. Is there any sort of concern that if America strikes Iran from that air base, that Iran could strike that airbase back. If that's the case, don't do it, because that's down the end of my road. But the other thing I wonder is where this stuff has been sort of speculated publicly. That's not very good, what they say in the military OPSEC hygiene. It doesn't have good operational security. So there might be this sort of no, you can't do it, almost as sort of a distraction. Because if you're going to do some sort of military strike, you don't say to your enemies, well, you know, we're going to be launching from this airbase with this aeroplane with these missiles on this day at this hour, and this is where we're going to target. You don't do that.
That's what Starmer would do, though, unfortunately.
Well, this is what that bonehead would do, for sure. But I do wonder. But lots of questions, and like I said, keep your eyes on this story. And someone out there who isn't me, I've tried to do it on my Substack, I've got as far as I can, but someone out there who's better place to do a proper investigative journalist piece. Can you dig into Herma and Sands, please? Please, it needs to be done. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but we're going to talk now about someone I've never heard of, Dame Antonia Romeo. Or Romeo, I don't know how she wishes it to be pronounced. She's actually got 1,000 names in between those as well. She is the new female head of the civil service. That is one of the most important jobs in the land. We don't often really know who they are. They're not exactly names up in lights. You know, we don't discuss them over the dinner table, but we're going to have a little look at this woman and whether this is a sound appointment. That's coming up after the break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, Cabinet Secretary. This is basically the most senior person in the civil service who liaises directly with the Prime Minister, with the Cabinet. They're the go-between between the apparatchiks, who are supposed to be the ones who then draw up how legislation is going to be implemented, organise the departments, the spending, the papers being written. I don't really know, I've never worked in civil service, but they're the doers, the bureaucrats. And they connect to the government who says, this is our ambition, this is the law we want to create, this is now what's going to be done, you've now got to translate this into reality. And the main bridge between the Cabinet, or the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Civil Service is the Cabinet Secretary, which is the head of the Civil Service. Now, bizarrely, Sir Chris Warmold sort of disappeared off the face of the earth. He was the scapegoat, if you will, for the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador. I can't really see why he's the scapegoat, frankly, but there you go. Off he went. I think he probably wanted to go. And then there's a sort of idea that 3 people were going to do the job. And then now it seems that Starmer has settled on Dame Antonia Romeo. First female in a 110-year history. I don't care what genitalia she's got. I really don't. But I mean, I don't really know where to go with this one, Philip. It's one of those stories where I'm like, well, let's just see what happens. She's being called the Queen of Woke. There's been allegations that she bullied people in times past. Again, I can't really say that I care too much, but are we to be alarmed by this? Is this because they're supposed to be neutral at the end of the day? They're just simply supposed to be the government's enabler, whoever is the government.
Yeah, well, they're never neutral, are they? And I think for the last 20 or 30 years, the civil service, the blob, has been as much our enemy as anybody else. You know, I'm just looking at some of her greatest hits here.
Okay.
She spent £31,000 of taxpayers' money on transatlantic flights while commuting from New York to London, plus £100,000 on kids' schooling. She was called the Queen of Woke, and she was sending weekly emails on trans, non-binary, and bi-visibility days where she was working. She is a civil service gender champion, and she was blogging about male allyship. She was massive on BLM. So it's, in a way, Alex, it's not necessarily about her. It's about, again, it's about Starmer and this choice, and it's about his tin ear. This kind of person is precisely the person we don't want. The British public do not want.
British public don't want, but it sounds like, you know, with that rap sheet, it sounds like precisely the sort of person that Starmer and his government would want. And we might not like it because we don't like this government and what they stand for, but you know, if she loves all of that stuff as hard as she loves it, then no wonder Starmer's looked at her and gone, right, this is the woman who's going to be able to enact our policies. Look, I don't like them. I don't like their policies. They were democratically elected, okay? It happened. They're democratically elected. They're stuffing it up, in my opinion. There might be people out there thinking they're doing a grand job. We don't like, we didn't vote for them. I certainly didn't. I doubt you did either. We don't like what they stand for and what they're trying to implement, but, you know, it's their every right to do so as a democratically elected government. They can be as left-wing as they want, quite frankly. And we're the ones who then should hold them to account and democratically get rid of them. But I can see the appeal, you know. If I was Prime Minister and I was looking at the roll call of all the people who might be the cabinet secretary in the civil service and who I wanted to appoint, I'd be going for the one with like the giant poster of Margaret Thatcher on their wall. You know, of course I would. I'm not going to be picking old Wokatron, am I?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, there is no other choice in the civil service. They are all like her. You know, it's Hobson's choice. They are definitely going to get someone who's a BLM fanatic. And she's also very keen on Stonewall as well. So my concern is that she's very keen and very close to and very allied with organisations and causes which we know to be corrupt and broken and harmful, and yet it's not that she's just nodding along with it all. She is the champion. She's the gender champion. Now, Keir Starmer and his government are, I mean, well, they're fighting for survival. I mean, if he stays beyond May, he's going to stay probably until May, and then he'll probably go, and they'll use him as the excuse for the catastrophe that's going to be the May elections. But they are struggling, and this story is classic Keir Starmer. You know, he's doing it. It's going to blow up in his face. Something will come out about. I can feel it. I can feel it in my water. Something is going to come out about her, and it's going to be another catastrophe.
Yeah,
and
no, I agree with you. But, you know, like I said, they're a left-wing government who want to do left-wing things, and that is what they're going to do until we can somehow dispose of them democratically, or they dispose of themselves. OK, let's take another short break. But after that, we're going to be discussing something which, I mean, it's just, we were talking about things sending a shiver down our spine earlier. Philip and I just been looking at the world and thinking, this isn't just unpleasant. This isn't just, you know, things aren't like they used to be. That sort of turn for the dark that's been spoken about for the best part of maybe 6 months, a year. Are we going to have a civil war? Are we that divided? Is the economy going to collapse? Is the government corrupt? All of these things. Yet another story that sort of, to me, sounds the bell of doom for this society. This is a newly opened Gales Bakery, all estate agents' favourites for upselling the value of a house, has been deliberately vandalised by anti-Semites. Why? Because one of the founders, who's not even part of Gales anymore, was Jewish. Oh yeah, the pogrom awaits. We're going to be discussing that after this.
Good morning,
Thank you for
Julian.
joining
Nice
us.
to be back with you again.
Well, I mean, again, extraordinary circumstances. It's the former prince's 66th birthday. He's lost his HRH, he's lost his prince, he's lost his dukedom, lost all his titles, lost his big fancy house in Royal Lodge in Windsor, banished to the Sandringham estate. What was your first reaction when you heard that he had actually been arrested?
Well, at long last, is my reaction. I've been calling out for this, frankly, for nearly 6 years, ever since the allegation emerged.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, take a look at this if you're watching on YouTube. I'll try and describe for those of you listening on the radio what it is that some of us are instead seeing. Because this is an attack against Gales Bakery in Archway in London. It has got horrible red graffiti written all over it. Let's boycott Gales, funds Israeli tech, which is just a nonsense. Gales doesn't fund Israeli tech. But, you know, who cares when it's a sort of anti-Semite conspiracy theory? Boycott Gales for genocide. There you go. All the usual middle-class blimmin' women with their blue hair standing there. I mean, it's just, these people are ill. They're ill. They're believing such craziness. They need to get off their computers and maybe go sit in a Gales and speak to other patrons of that coffee shop. But Philip, you know, we've been getting used to this sort of stuff since the pro-Palestine marches, since two-tier policing, since the Southport riots. So it's just becoming so normalised now. Not just in the United Kingdom either. This is happening in America, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, across Europe. The rise of anti-Semitism. And I remember at one point thinking to myself, you know, growing up, and you learn World War II history, and, you know, I was fortunate to have wonderful grandparents who both fought during the war. And so we've got that generational connection. We know what went on. We heard it from the horse's mouth. And I always struggled to understand how the Germans, you know, a developed Christian nation, just like us, went along with all of Hitler's evil. You think, how does that come to pass? How do rational people, academics, doctors, lawyers, people of great intelligence, because it wasn't the working classes in Germany getting on board with the Nazis, it was the intelligentsia. And you think, how does that happen? And I'm afraid in the last week, from things I've been reading online, the attacks against me and things that people are now coming out and saying publicly, I'm like, that's how it happens.
That's how it happens. I think, I mean, we had anti-Semitism and terrible racism in the 70s, but that was different in a way. That was neo-Nazis and the National Front that were on the streets. The anti-Semitism that we have now is threaded through the institutions. It's the middle class, it's the upper middle class, it's thoughtful.
Yeah.
It's framed in anti-Zionism. It's still anti-Semitism. They're talking about genocide there. That is a libel. That's a blood libel, because there is no genocide. It's simply not happening. The only people responsible for the deaths in Gaza are Hamas.
Of course.
Okay, that's it. That's simple. Now, I know a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Jewish friends. I live just near Leeds, and they are frightened. Alex, they're frightened of walking in the street. Many of my Jewish friends are thinking of leaving the country, and they are worried that they can't go anywhere in Europe because of all of this wave of anti-Semitism. They're looking to South America and places like that. That's unprecedented. I never thought I would live to see the kinds of things on both sides. And the problem here, it's not just the left or the right, it's both sides, as you well know this last week. Okay, but just last weekend, what did we have? We had Jew hunts, people going door to door in Bristol, Sheffield, and saying, you know, knocking on doors saying, are you a Zionist, and noting it down.
Yeah.
So we're having a database now. This is pure, horrible, nasty anti-Semitism. That's on the left. That's the Green Party. This is the Islamo-fascist.
And the Green Party
that is the Green Party.
Right, Green Party who've been reported to counter-terror police for being a breeding ground for Islamist extremism, and they need to be looked into, because of course the legacy media aren't doing it. Oh, they'll platform Zach Polanski. No one's asked a single question about that Mothin Ali, the deputy leader. No, don't look there. The Greens are just lovely. They love hugging trees and, you know, rainbows. It is not true. They're sinister in some respects. But we are seeing...
Sinister, and they are campaigning in places like Gorton and Denton on a Gaza ticket. You know what I mean? So it is crazy. But the point I was just going to make before, Alex, it's not just the left, is it? Now it's the right, the very online right. We are seeing the most repulsive anti-Semitism, the most repulsive racism, and this idea
and
that
misogyny.
you can just deport anybody, and homophobia, you can just deport anybody who isn't called Smith. It's absurd.
It's absurd. I have had so many people. I mean, by the way, anyone watching this who's a big fan of the very online right, who now regard me as enemy number one, don't even try and troll me on X, because I've given it up for Lent. So enjoy yourself. I'm not going to be there for 40 days. But I have had so many people, Philip, I'm not going to name names and name who, because I don't want them to receive the sort of horrible pile-on that I just have, it was disgusting. I've got a thick skin, and what I know is when you've called people out, when you've exposed them, you've done a good thing. It doesn't matter the backlash. They exposed themselves. They sat there. I asked clear questions. They answered them, and now they're wanting to come back against me and tell me I was doing my job as a journalist, okay? They're the ones who said the things they said. But I've had loads of people reach out to me, big names in the world of, you know, right-wingery, let's say, who names that the audience would know. And I'm not talking about 2 or 3 people. I'm talking about 10, 15 people who aren't speaking to each other, who've all independently got in touch with me. Some of them are saying we're terrified by this rise in ethno-nationalism. There's something really dark about how emboldened people are now. Other people are saying I've also been on the receiving end of their vile threats and abuse. And there are people involved in this who are really, you know, with some very ugly sentiments. And so that has given me a sense of solace, because I felt kind of out there on my own for a while. But what is shocking me is there's still people, despite the rhetoric that they can see being put online, and how far it's now gone. How far it's now gone. You know, I'm sorry, but I have seen social media posts put up by Rupert Lowe using words like cockroaches and parasites. Think what you like about mass immigration, but come on, this isn't Rwanda. What are you doing? How can anybody look at that, see it, and think it's okay? So this is what I'm saying. We know the UK faces massive problems. This Gale situation exposes that. We know there are big unintegrated communities. We know there is Islamists. We know we've got a weak government not doing anything about it. But what I don't want to see is the same level of ugliness being generated as a counterforce, because when you start saying things like millions must go at any cost, those who don't integrate must go at any cost, Who's deciding who's integrated or not? You're knocking on houses door to door like the Green Party in Bristol saying, do you know the words of the national anthem? Otherwise we're dragging you into a Hercules and dropping you, in some far-flung island. Like, how are these things prosecuted? Okay? And that's what I want to know, because we're living in such a febrile time. What we cannot risk, and I think there are people out there, I'm sorry, I think there are people out there bruising for some sort of civil unrest. I think there are people salivating at the prospect who want that. And I'd say be careful what you wish for, because I have worked in third world countries where they have post-election violence as a result of ethno-national politics. And it's not funny. It's not funny when people are being stabbed in the street. It's not okay. It's not what we should ever wish for.
It's really not funny when you're having your windows smashed and people are invading your home, raping people and murdering people, because that happens in civil war. Okay, I think one of the problems here is that the many people who are doing this live their lives online. Yeah. They don't live in the real world. They have no, as you talked before again about this connection between the past and your connection to your grandparents and the Holocaust, that very real connection for people of our, I'm older than you, but we're of the same generation, of our age. We remember that connection. The problem I've got with the right at the moment, and I'm a philosophical conservative. I've always been attracted to conservative thought because it's pragmatic. It's not riddled with identity politics. And it isn't a slave to concepts and theories. But what's happening with the right at the moment is they are aping the left. It is becoming a kind of a version of left-wing infighting, and the vitriol and cruelty and horribleness is something that I want to turn my back on.
Right, the bullying, the wanting to silence people online by ganging up on them, the sort of doxing of people. When identity and the language being used, I'm sorry, like I said, parasite, cockroach, not okay. Whatever your political views, not okay. Because what you're doing is you're stoking up a load of young men who have every right to feel disenfranchised, ignored, let down, worried about their futures, looking at the future, going, am I going to be a minority in my own country? Okay? We understand that. But if you're stoking them up with extreme language, and at the same time saying that the one political party they might be able to vote for that might represent them is part of controlled opposition. So you're not giving a democratic solution to these people. Instead, you're firing them all up and basically telling them you're going to have to take matters into your own hands. That is so reckless. It is so reckless.
It's just so stupid, but it's also quite embarrassing because what we've got on the right now, when I started being involved in commentary and politics, we had a kind of general consensus and general agreement. The far right lunatics weren't part of what we are, right? And now they've been co-opted. Now they are emboldened. And what we've got is a kind of People's Front of Judea, right-wing version of your party in a way.
Yeah. Not your party is what I've been calling it.
But not only is it quite scary, and the kinds of people that are coalescing around this kind of stuff, it's actually quite embarrassing as well. I'm really embarrassed with it because this is, I suppose this is the key point that I'll finish with. There is a real danger here that we are going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Philip. That's the end of the first hour. Very good to have your company. Thank you so much. Thank you a little bit for having my back. I felt a bit alone in the world the last 48 hours. Don't you go anywhere. You stay with me, please, because I'm going to be with you up until 10 o'clock for more news and more views. Back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now we've got a bit of breaking news for you. Have a look at this. This is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, pictured leaving a police station following his arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office. There you go, hardly the most flattering snap. Looks a little bit terrified, doesn't he? Good, I am glad. Arrested on his birthday, of course. He's been released after an investigation that's lasted almost 12 hours. Who knows where we go from here? Very unprecedented. You know, that picture, my goodness, look at that. That's one for the ages, isn't it? And certainly, depending how this unravels, well, we'll see. More pictures, no doubt, to follow. Let's bring in the brilliant historian and broadcaster. I love him to bits. Hopefully he's wearing his waistcoat. It is Rafe Hadel-Mancu. Hi, Rafe.
Hello, my dear. Always lovely to be with you.
Oh, and you always look so dapper. You have such sartorial elegance. And your house, I want to come hang out in that house. It looks like it's just an antiques haven.
Well, having a nice little gin and tonic after a very long day of covering an insane story, as you can imagine.
Well, here you go. One more little shift to do, and then you can get stuck into that G&T. I mean, look, let's look at this from a position of history, because we've sort of done it in the first half from a position of news, but as a historian, this is a very culturally significant moment.
It is indeed. I mean, historically, it's without precedent in modern history. You have to go back to 1647 for the last time a royal was held in custody, and that was King Charles I after he lost the English Civil War, when Parliament seized him. So that, you know, in that context, I mean, this really is a remarkable moment. It's also, I would say, what I've said for a long time, actually, that the Epstein scandal is the biggest political and royal crisis in modern history. It's much bigger than the Profimo scandal of 1963, which ultimately led to the downfall of the Macmillan government, if you think about Mandelson and what's happened with all of that. And it's bigger than the abdication crisis of 1936, where we saw King Edward VIII abdicate in order to marry an American divorcee and become the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. Because in 1936, now we think about Edward VIII being pro-Nazi and all of this. No one knew that back in 1936. It was a romance story. It was a man who gave up being king and emperor to marry the woman he loved, and there was a great deal of support there. This is a very different story. This is bigger than Rufimo, bigger than the abdication crisis combined. And of course, that there are now questions for the monarchy itself to ask about who knew what and when. And the monarchy's traditional mantra has always been never complain, never explain. And that worked very well in the past. But this is a very different situation.
I mean, one thing that I would assume is that when we saw the fallout of Megxit, God, I haven't said that word for ages. When we saw the fallout of that, it was very clear that the different royal households sort of operate completely separately and sort of speak to each other via their press officers and their courtiers. And so I'm not particularly worried that other members of the royal family would have known what Andrew was up to in this regard. I don't see any reason why they should know any more than, you know, if somebody's dodgy uncle who lives in a different town was doing something, why the niece would know. Or, do you know what I mean? But what is interesting now is the optics of how this plays out, because the allegations against him, in terms of basically giving classified information to an individual, possibly for personal gain, comes with a jail sentence. And the optics of potentially Andrew in a court of law being sentenced to imprisonment and then being inside a prison, I mean, that is, you know, that's one heck of a photograph for the ages.
And the ages is the correct term, because, you know, he's being investigated, may be charged in a few weeks with misconduct in public office. That comes with a potential life imprisonment sentence. We're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. He's also being investigated for breaching the Official Secrets Act. That comes with a potential 2-year sentence. And even he could be considered for the National Security Act 23, which also carries a life imprisonment sentence. Now, don't think what he's done merits a life sentence, but like that. But these are very significant potential offences. Of course, the Crown Prosecution Service and the police wouldn't necessarily go to the length of arresting him if they didn't think that they had real grounds for laying a charge, because he's such a high-profile figure. Something has come to light recently that has changed the situation. Obviously, we've got the Epstein files being released, but we don't know whether what they're acting on is what we all know about, or whether there's stuff that they've discovered which has not yet been made privy to the public, or it actually just could be that because the king said in his last statement that the palace was willing to work with the police, it could very well be that the police have gone to the palace, spoken with them, accessed some communications there, and found evidence that has led to this arrest. We don't know, but the reality is you don't arrest someone like this. I mean, it's quite normal, actually, not to arrest someone in this situation. Standard procedure is to invite someone to come in for questioning. The fact that they chose to arrest Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and on his birthday does lead to some other questions as well.
Well, evidently, they needed to have a search warrant to then go into those royal residences and take materials out that they're now going to scan. And to be able to get a search warrant, you've had to have a conversation with the lawyer, the Crown Prosecution Service, that the threshold has been crossed, that there's enough evidence to suggest this needs to take place. My understanding is Shabana Mahmood was told in advance, but not the royal family, which, of course, is normal. I don't see why they should have phoned up anyone and said, oh, by the way, we're off to arrest your brother. I feel very sorry in many respects for King Charles, because he's faced so much. This poor man, how long has he been king for? Like 5 years, 6 years? He's got cancer. His daughter-in-law, cancer. His brother exposed as hanging out with a paedophile and potentially selling state secrets. And his mad wife, who seems to be absolutely besotted with Epstein, and her daughters are now inculcated in all of this. We've had riots on the streets of Britain. We've got an economy that looks like it's about to collapse. You just sort of think, the Queen once said, oh, she's had an annus horribilis. I'm like, poor Charles, he's had a whole blimmin' regnus horribilis.
Yeah, and thankfully we haven't seen a huge decline in support for the monarchy over this. A lot of people are saying, well, this is going to bring down the monarchy. The king should abdicate, to which I say absolute nonsense. The king is not going to abdicate over this. The king has no reason to abdicate over this, and the monarchy still remains secure and strong. And yes, your sympathies, have to go out to His Majesty, because the longest wait apprenticeship in history as Prince of Wales, he finally gets to become king. And the first part of his reign so far completely overshadowed by the outrageous conduct of his wayward son and his daughter-in-law. Then, of course, we have Andrew's saga, plus cancer and everything else that's going on. And the king has done all that he can within his own power to deal with the situation. He has stripped him of all his royal offices, stripped him of all his honours and titles. There's nothing more that he could actually do. And he's, of course, sent him into exile in Sandringham, in Wood Farm, later on in Marsh Farm. And of course, everyone in the royal family, including Andrew as well, assumed that being sent into the wilds of Norfolk would mean that he would live the rest of his time in obscurity, gradually fading from public perception. No one could imagine that he would actually end up now in hotter water than he's ever been in before.
So where do they go forward with this? Because, like I said, it could, and I couldn't put odds on this. I don't know one way or the other because I don't understand the legal implications. We don't know until things are fully investigated. But he could end up in prison. That would be remarkable. One imagines he would have to be in a high-security isolation ward because he's such a high-profile person. You can imagine if he goes to your average UK prison jammed full of Islamists, he'd be a very popular target. If he doesn't end up in prison, where do they put him? There was conversations that maybe he could be excommunicated out to the Middle East. But again, I think he's a sitting security target there. Any nation who wanted to embarrass the United Kingdom, you just have to invite Andrew over to, your regular harem, and he's going to get stuck right in, isn't he? And the two princesses now, it would appear from things that are manifesting from the Epstein releases that even when, you know, they were a bit more grown up, they kind of knew about the relationship between their mum and Epstein. They always go hang out on the islands. Perhaps they were bankrolling their royal lifestyles. It's been suggested that for 15 years, Epstein said he was paying for Sarah Ferguson, and those girls grew up going on lots of lovely foreign holidays. And there's even a suggestion that there was a communication where she had said to one of them had said to her mother, well, you know, come out and just say he served his time in prison. I mean, it's that whole family now is sort of, in terms of the optics for the House of Windsor, nuclear waste.
Yes, I mean, hitherto the British public have been very sympathetic towards the two daughters, thinking, of course, that the sins of the father can't be meted out onto the children. All we have is speculation, though. We don't really know the full details on any of this stuff, so I'm loath to go down that path at the moment. But yes, you're quite right. Look, we're only in the foothills of all of this. Firstly, there have to be questions asked of the British police. Why did the British police not go months ago to the American Department of Justice and ask them to give them whatever they had on Andrew in the Epstein files? Could this arrest not have been made months and months earlier? Is it actually the case that Andrew was being treated differently to everybody else because he was born a prince of the blood royal? Those are questions that the police need to ask. The second thing, of course, is all of this just deals with misconduct in public office in relation to his role as a trade envoy, email sent to Epstein in 2010. We now have, of course, former Prime Minister Gordon Brown calling for an investigation into the issue of sex trafficking, with 90 flights on the Lolita Express, Epstein's private jet, coming into the UK, 15 of them after he was freed from prison for being a sex convict. So those are questions to be asked. And of course, we have allegations by women, of course, that they were sex trafficked. There are 7 different police investigations going on in this country. So many investigations that the different police forces have all joined up now. So they're all working together on these different things. This is all still going to get even worse potentially for Andrew.
I think it is. And I just, you know, I can imagine this is going to have to lead to a number of crisis conversations for the royal family, and I do not envy them that. It's always extremely difficult for any family when you have somebody in that family who does atrocious things and the whole world knows about it, because you can choose your friends, can't you? But you cannot pick your relatives. Rafe, thank you ever so much. It's always such a delight and a pleasure to be talking to you. He's one of my favourite humans. He's a national treasure, is Mr. Rafe Hadel-Manku. Do you know what's interesting, actually? I do some work for American media, and so today my phone's been ringing off the hook with a particular American news channel who wants me to commentate on what's going on. And one of the legacy channel anchors over in America, and I don't know if it's CNBC or CNN or MSNBC, one of them, did this massive rant talking about how is it in America nobody's been arrested for the Epstein stuff yet in Britain. They've got their act together, they're arresting Andrew, and it's like, no, you don't get it. We're not arresting him for the, you know, trafficking of the girls. That would be American issues, and then, you know, they'd have to appeal to our government to extradite him to face trial over there. We're arresting him for the giving away the state secrets. It's amazing, Americans sometimes. You know, we're talking about some of their big channels just not even understanding the bare basics of a story, although the same can be said of too many news outlets these days, but not this one. OK, let's take a short, cheeky little break now. But after the break, it would be great to have a chat with some of you and keep your messages coming in as well. Let's read out some. Andy should have jumped on his nag and galloped cross-country to a waiting helicopter. Yeah, just imagine. This one's funny, from Steve in East Yorkshire. A bit of a mixed day for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. On the downside, he's been arrested by the police. On his birthday, of course. But on the upside, he's now eligible for his state pension and a free bus pass. Hey! Oh, the king is the head of the judiciary and not subject to any laws, says someone else. Oh, the constitutional stuff involved with all of this. That might be the case, but Andrew's not the king. The king cannot be interviewed, arrested, charged, no matter what. The police cannot and will not speak directly to the king. He had total immunity as the sitting monarch, says Paul in Belfast. Thank you for those factoids. I appreciate. Andrew would have said, do you know who I am? I bet he did. There we go. Some really great comments coming in. Oh, let's read these about Chagos as well. I think Starmer will go ahead with Chagos regardless of the military exemption we have and Trump's disapproval. There's something personal on the line for him, so he has no option but to do it. The money involved personally to him, his lawyer mates in China, means he has to do it. Look, we don't know if there's any money from him, no follow the money connect. We don't know that. We've got to be very careful. The last people you want to be libelling are KCs, by the way. Let's just point that out. There are favours and bargaining going on behind the scenes. There is too much on the line for him personally. I think Trump will go off the deep end with him in the UK, but if he does, it will give Starmer the excuse he wants to lump us back in with the EU. Well, I agree with that bit for sure. Alex, how I would love to see our rotten to the core Prime Minister have his collar felt over the Chagos Islands fiasco. It'd brighten all of our days. Well, yeah, kind of feel like that would be an interesting turn of events. And thank you for your message, Kev in Southampton. I genuinely feel for you at the moment. Be strong and be safe. Don't you worry about me. I'm a sturdy old goat. And finally, Adrian in Horsham. While I agree with every word regarding not wishing for a far-right backlash, I think it's disingenuous for people to start clutching pearls. The British people have been let down by consecutive governments, all with a globalist agenda for over 25 years. I agree. Their frankly reckless approach to their own agendas at the expense of the electorate is only ever going to end one way. I agree. I have sympathy with the sentiments of people saying, oh my goodness, by the time I reach, 60 years old, I'm going to be a minority in my country. How that must feel for young people, and particularly young men who have been besmirched and who feel, I would imagine, I'm not a man, but I'd imagine there's something quite emasculating about looking at your country as a young man, looking at the future ahead of you and thinking, I feel powerless to do anything about this. This cannot happen under my nose. I understand those sentiments. And you're right, Adrian, you go too far on the left, you get a backlash on the right, and vice versa. Like I would say, Sir Isaac Newton's third law of motion this is, but for every force in nature there's an equal and opposite force. We can see the genesis of what has been going on politically, and I'm by no means excusing or exonerating or condoning what this mad mixture of the woke agenda and two-tierism and weak geopolitics and bashing our own identity and our culture and kowtowing to those of other countries and flooding the nation with people who have no connection to our sceptred isle. We get all of that. You know I'm the first in line to say that. But it does not excuse coming up with something where it will just make everything uglier, right? You know that. I know that. I'm not suddenly going weak. I'm not suddenly going, yeah, open borders, they're great, way. I'm not going to wear a hijab on air tomorrow. Don't be ridiculous. But what I don't ever want to see is what I am seeing with the sort of things that are being said online now, out in the open, emboldened, that were unimaginable even about 2 weeks ago. It's not okay. I think about all of my friends. I think about people in my own family who are of mixed heritage. And I think about, if we've got to this stage this quickly, what is the next stage? Where do we go from here? I think about the neighbours I used to have in London. Yes, there are a lot of men from very different cultures who are vile, who used to harass me. A lot of people from other countries who are involved in criminality, people who should not be here. Let's make that very clear. But there are a lot of people who have come and worked and love this country. I think of my former neighbours who are Turkish. I love them to the bones. Oh, with some of these people online bruising for some sort of fight, they'd be having their windows smashed. That's not funny. It's really important that as a nation, we are still mature enough and sensible enough to try and do things properly, morally, proportionally, democratically, with an eye on the fallout and an eye on our futures. Because I've seen what civil unrest looks like. Proper civil unrest, not the odd protest or riot. It would make a pro-Palestine march look like a kids' party doing the hokey cokey. You don't want it, trust me. However desperate you feel, however 11th hour it feels, however much you think something's got to be done right now, however impatient you are for the change to stop whatever's happening, from continuing, from getting worse, however much you want to reverse things, you can never turn back the clock. But you can sensibly come up with rational, pragmatic, strong, determined approaches to curing some of our nation's ills. But there's nothing good that comes when identity politics mixes with right-wingery. That's not what we do in this country. We haven't done that for decades. We haven't done that since the days of Oswald Mosley, and I don't want to see it right now. Keep your cool, people. I know you're patriots. I know you're frustrated. I know you're angry. I know you feel desperate, ignored, unheard, that you feel like there's nothing you can do, that all of a sudden, online, up appears a white knight, a saviour who's saying all the things out loud that you felt too embarrassed to say yourself for years. Perhaps there's a reason that some of these things have not been said for so long, because we all know how to have self-discipline and restraint. We all know how to be a good person. And for all those people out there banging on about being a Christian nation, I don't like Christianity being brought into politics, and I am a Christian. And if you're a Christian, check your behaviour. Because a proper Christian doesn't go trolling people and doxing people and bullying people and trying to create a pylon online. You think that's Christian behaviour? Mate, you haven't read the Bible. Right. Taking a short break now. Your calls after this, please. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call at your normal network rate. I'd love to speak to some of you. 8722. If you'd rather send a text message, write the word talk before you text. You can also send a WhatsApp or leave a voice note on WhatsApp on 0344 499 1000. All right, speak to some of you just after this.
Good morning,
Thank you for
Julian.
joining
Nice
us.
to be back with you again.
Well, I mean, again, extraordinary circumstances. It's the former prince's 66th birthday. He's lost his HRH, he's lost his prince, he's lost his dukedom, lost all his titles, lost his big fancy house in Royal Lodge in Windsor, banished to the Sandringham estate. What was your first reaction when you heard that he had actually been arrested?
Well, at long last, is my reaction. I've been calling out for this, frankly, for nearly 6 years, ever since the allegation emerged.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Pete's just said, Alex, take a deep breath. Blood pressure's going to go over the top. Very relaxed, Pete. Don't you worry about me, my love. My blood pressure is in good nick. Although I would say the healthy offering from the staff canteen. I was trying to eat healthily. That was a tough ask today. Dean and I were like, yeah, we go to floor 14. At 6 o'clock, they put out a meal. And when you do this shift, well, you don't really get to eat. It's great for the waistline. So we always go to the canteen at 6 o'clock and get our little dinners. And normally it's mwah, chef's kiss. I don't know what it is. Like, we do have an amazing canteen. Today, it was a Buddha bowl. I'm like, oh, it's a bit left-wing, innit? A Buddha bowl and all that. Yeah, I don't know. There was nothing zen about that plate of food. It's met to the dustbin, so I'm probably going to have some sort of petrol station sandwich on the way home. Hey-ho. If it's good enough for Boris Johnson during COVID, it's good enough for me. OK, let's do some calls, shall we? This is Josie in Leicester. Hi, Josie.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, very well. How are you, Josie?
Good, thank you. Okay, so I rang because all this country, it's a total mess. The country's a mess. But all this, Starmer didn't want the monarchy to begin with. He wanted the monarchy scrapped. So the way I look at it, he's planting all of this behind the scenes, and I think he's the most dangerous man for our country. I want him out.
Do you think that I mean, I don't think Starmer has much say of when the police arrest Prince Andrew and all of this, but it is quite useful that is the big headline. You know, the front pages are covered with this stuff and not covered with the dodgy deal over the Chagos Islands. And also, I think it should be a massive story that we've turned around and said to America, when I say we, I mean they in number 10, you cannot have your military aircraft leaving from your air bases in this country. This is a huge breakdown in the so-called special relationship.
Yeah, I get that, but what I'm trying to say, nobody is reading between the lines of what Starmer is actually doing. He's the most dangerous person. All his human rights lawyers, all of them, they are planted this for years. He got into power. He wants this, and he's got a personal agenda to destroy this country.
I often feel with this lot that they're either ludicrously illiterate when it comes to politics, far too woke for their own good, or, like you said, have ill intent. Some of it just doesn't make sense. Or perhaps some of them, and I don't know who I mean by them, but some people in positions of power or with influence over power, perhaps there's compromat on them. Perhaps they're already under the control of hostile states, because I can't otherwise seem to make sense of some of these decisions being taken by this government. It's truly terrifying. Josie in the wonderful city of Leicester, thank you ever so much for giving me a call. I love this. Alex, I was reading earlier that Andrew would have been allowed to make a phone call at the police station. Andrew, I'd like to phone my teddies. Sorry, that is quite funny. He does, of course, famously have a load of teddies that he puts on it. He'd make his maid or whatever arrange on his bed every night with some sort of blueprint of where they should all sit. I mean, come on. That's weird. That's very weird. Where do I get my tickets to the Chagos Island? This country is finished. Do you know what? That would be my dream holiday. You know, the beaches look lovely, turquoise sea, an atoll in the middle of nowhere, so you don't have all the sort of, you know, hullabaloo of gazillions of tourists lying there getting a suntan and watching military aircraft. That would be my absolute dream existence. Yeah. This year, no doubt, as per every year, I've already got my tickets to Fairford Air Show, and they're announcing the aircraft that are going to be there. Fairford is the US military airbase that apparently we've said that the US can't use. Although, you know, I kind of think when that thing does go into sort of military service, sometimes they have to cancel the air show, and I love that air show. I love military aircraft. I'm sorry, it's one of my weird little passions. What's your favourite jet? That's what I want to know. I'm an SR-71 girl. I'm Blackbird all the way. That was the coolest plane ever invented. I like to think it's still up there flying around because it's just too awesome up there in the stratosphere with its sort of astronauts. Because it's not normal pilots who'd fly that thing. They would have to be trained astronauts. It went so high. And you know, it goes so high and so fast at such an altitude, it messes with the hydraulics. It denatures the structures of metals. And so you have to have expandable pipes on the SR-71. And when it's parked on the tarmac, it bleeds. All the oil and the hydraulic fluid runs down the sort of carapace of the fuselage of the aeroplane into big trays underneath. I haven't seen that thing for ages. I remember ages ago in an air show was the last time I saw it, but every now and then I just Google it. I just, with a fire coming out the back, I just Google the SR-71. I go, oh, yeah! Sorry. That's just, seriously, this is my sort of like weird, my weird aircraft pornography. Right, let's talk now to Thomas Godfrey, who's the brilliant Sun reporter, and he is live from Sandringham. Thomas, how are you doing?
Good evening, Alex. Yes, it's very cold here on a day of extraordinary developments. One stunning find after another. The first news, of course, coming at 8 a.m. this morning when Andrew Mountbatten Windsor had a knock at the door from Thames Valley police officers and was told that he was going to be arrested. He was then, we know now, taken to Aylsham Police Station, where he spent around 10 to 11 hours in custody. And just in the last 20 minutes or so, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has returned here to Wood Farm, his estate in Norfolk, where he now lives after being booted out of Royal Lodge at the end of last year by his brother, the King. It's been just an absolutely incredible day of news, but this is, of course, the start of what could now be a very long criminal process. And the distinction here is this is no longer an assessment of information in relation to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. It is now a full-blown investigation that he faces on his 66th birthday.
Yeah, incredible, unprecedented, historic moments. I'd imagine the press pack down there is pretty excitable. I can imagine there's a number of journos from all corners of the world.
Yeah, it seems every news outlet and their dog has turned up here in Sandringham. It's no surprise, you're right, this is unprecedented. The last royal ever to be arrested was Charles I in 1649, coming up to 400 years ago. And this is the first time that a royal has been arrested by the police. We are properly now in uncharted waters. The offence of which Andrew is suspected of, the key word there is suspected. These are allegations at this stage, and he hasn't been charged, but it is misconduct in public office. It relates to Andrew allegedly sharing confidential government documents from his time as trade envoy with Jeffrey Epstein. This all comes from the latest tranche of the Epstein files released by the Department of Justice last month. A number of emails in there appeared to show attachments that Andrew had forwarded to Epstein. Amongst them were documents relating to his trips abroad in 2010 while the UK's trade envoy. It's unclear what was in the attachments, though some of them are thought to be reports and readouts of some of his meetings from that trip. Misconduct in public office is an incredibly complex offence, but potentially worryingly for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor tonight, the maximum punishment upon conviction is life in prison.
Is there a sort of lower threshold as well? Does it automatically come with a custodial sentence if they find the smoking gun and he's proven to be guilty?
No, not necessarily automatic custody. I mean, this offence generally is applied to police officers, prison officers, you see firefighters. It can be applied to members of parliament. It is actually a fairly vague offence. There's no sort of statutory guidelines as to what it is. There are some components to it, which means that it has to be an abuse of a public position. We know that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, while trade envoy, spent £4 million of taxpayers' money going around the world. But the police have looked at the evidence over the last month. They've spoken to those around him, we presume, and earlier today decided, or at least last night, decided they had now enough evidence to launch a full investigation. And that investigation has begun with the arrest of the suspect who was taken into custody. Suspects not always taken into custody for an investigation to begin, by the way. This is a pretty dramatic step, exacerbated by the fact, of course, the man who they've arrested is the brother of the monarch.
Yeah, and of course, the former American ambassador also seems to be swept up in the fallout from the Epstein files. Britain leading the way internationally on arresting people connecting to these exposés. Thomas, can I just say, you're a telebox natural, my lad. You should get out from behind the desk and get on site a lot more. I think you're brilliant. I hope you're snuggly and warm there over in Norfolk, and there's some sort of cafe nearby to go and warm up, because it's bitterly cold out there, and that's in central London. I'd imagine in the wilds of the east of the country it's even colder. Brilliant reporting there. Right, we're going to be taking a short break now. When we come back, I'm joined by the sensational Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. An excellent lad he is as well. We're going to be talking about this staggering report of how much money we're spending on giving benefits to migrant households in just 18 months. It's going to make you spit feathers. That's after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks, Russell and Devon. You say, hi, Alex. On a light note, have you seen the SR71 on display at Duxford? I really want to. I really, really want to. That is definitely sort of #1 on my UK visit list. Gonna have a bit of time off in the near future. Maybe I will go. Right. Hello, Robert.
Good evening.
You look lovely. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm fine. It's been fun, hasn't it, the last 48 hours for young Alex? I was just saying to Robert, it's so nice having him sit here because he's just so nice and sane. But what isn't sane is the fact that we've spent, I mean, this is astonishing, 15 billion in benefits to migrant households in just 18 months. This is research shared exclusively with the Daily Mail for, who? But who did that? Was it you? Was it your
Yes,
research? This is why you're so brilliant. It was your amazing research. Exclusively with the Daily Mail. Why not exclude? Do you not like us more?
We throw it around. We throw it around. Everyone gets a bit of an exclusive from time to time.
All right then. 70% of this eye-watering sum was given to households containing at least one unemployed foreign national. I mean, when you look at things like this, that's an easy fix politically.
Massively so.
When I look at this stuff, and it drives me mad, I think at least there's a very easy political fix for that, which is no more benefits to migrants. Done.
Yeah.
But that... During the Brexit campaign, we're talking about saving 13 billion quid over the course of 10 years of Brexit. 15 billion in 18 months to pay for randos who shouldn't be here to not do anything.
Well, exactly. And you think about the fact that, it's about 6 billion a year literally going to households where there's a foreign national that's come into the country and isn't even working. They are literally signed on, being given benefits every month. And you think about what we could do with 6 billion a year just unlocked in this country. That's an extra...
Prisons, hospitals...
200 quid extra in every family's back pocket. Or, I think there was a calculation that actually that figure amounts to the total amount of income tax and national insurance paid by 900,000 full-time working Brits a year.
Whoa, so that's basically the income tax of, let's round it up to 1 million because it sounds better. Even though it's not accurate, 900,000, but I like 1 million.
Well, 1 million people are getting up at, God knows what time of the day, setting their alarm, getting up, doing 12 8-hour shifts, really, really putting in the hours. HMRC are coming banging on the door, taking as much money as they can get out of them, and it is going to people who we have control over who comes into our country. These people who are not working did not need to be in our country. And I just think it's a woeful state of affairs, and the situation is rapidly deteriorating, actually. If you look at the increase in foreign nationals that are signing on, the numbers that are on indefinite leave to remain, it's increased 2-3-fold since 2022, the number of people with indefinite leave to remain.
What do you think's going on here? Is this sort of the result of the so-called Boris wave, or even before
this
that,
is before
and people
this
is before the Boris wave? I think that there must be people who just are coming because they already know how to game the system before they land in the UK. In fact, I know that to be the case, quite frankly. But I'm sure there must be people saying to their mates over in wherever, let's pick a random country, Bangladesh. If you go to Britain, you just have to go there with a visa, say you're studying this course, then you claim asylum, or then if you don't work, it's okay because they'll pay you X amount per month, and the more children, I think they know. Yeah. I think people know this system and know how to game it.
That's a really good point. So when it comes to actually the asylum system, we think it is all just the small boats, but actually over half of it is individuals who have effectively lied to the Home Office and said, I'm going to come and study, or I'm going to come and do X, Y or Z role. In reality, their full intent is to claim asylum, knowing full well how easy it will be to get given that status. And then once you get given that status, there it is. The British welfare state is well and truly open to you. So these figures are before the Boris wave has even started to appear in them, and this really just hammers home how crucial it is that at the very least the Home Secretary gets through her modest, don't go far enough reforms to sort of stave off this problem until 2029, when hopefully we get a sort of a centre-right government that's able to effectively just say, hold on, indefinite leave to remain just doesn't work for this country anymore. It's created in the 1970s when our immigration system was running at a net negative level. This is not built for an era of mass migration. It's time to just effectively do away with the whole system.
I mean, how many countries on earth give benefits to migrants? Because I've never heard of this. They can't be really doing it much in France, because otherwise a lot of people would be claiming asylum over there, although France definitely has its own extreme immigration problems. I'd say more than we do, and that's kind of saying something. But it seems such a crazy proposition that someone can come from abroad, get a job, then become unemployed and say, right, instead of going home, I say this all the time. I've worked in lots of countries abroad, and when my contracts come to an end, I've come back home. I don't then go, well, I'm not doing that job anymore, but I want to stay, please.
And that is how proper functioning countries do it. They are very strident that if you are coming into the country, you have to be offering above and beyond even a sort of median contribution. You have to be a real asset to that country. Unfortunately, here now, and the conversation has been so geared off kilter, we are obsessed with this idea that we need low-skilled migration because somehow we don't have the ability or the wherewithal to manage our own labour market and to make sure that actually Brits are filling their own roles. And then when you have individuals working at the low end of a labour market, of course, they are more likely to actually end up falling into either just general welfare or welfare that is dependent on them being unemployed. And it's, you know, a real situation that unless we have a radical overhaul and just look at best practice in other countries around the world, even in America where they are a bit more stringent on this, they still actually, I think, are probably a bit too liberal than they'd like to be on this front. But countries are starting to have these conversations. I just don't think indefinitely to remain is a status that serves any purpose to the British people. I think it is effectively us, after just 5 years, extending undue largesse to individuals who probably have, even in those 5 years when they've been on a work visa, making a very, very modest, if any, contribution to the Treasury. So it's time for a complete overhaul, and indefinitely to remain has to go.
There will always be stories, individual cases, where you think, oh, that's awful. So I'm thinking, I've brought them up earlier in the show, my former Turkish next-door neighbours, who have been in the country for 7 years, an oncologist and a biochemist, and so most fanatical Britophiles you'd ever meet. They've got a son who's going to be going to university in the next couple of years, and they've had the nature of their visa changed, and they really want indefinite leave to remain, and they're really terrified that they're not going to be able to get it now, which means they won't be able to send their son to a UK university without paying foreign tuition fees. And when you know people like that who are really close to you, who you just adore, and they say, you know, this is now going to be applied retrospectively, we've come here, we've done everything expected of us, it just doesn't seem fair. You think it doesn't seem fair. But at the same time, you cannot build policy based upon individual cases like that, and it's really hard to know, because I've never been a big fan of policies being applied retrospectively, but so much madness has happened in the last few years when it comes to the levels of migration that you kind of think, well, if we don't apply this retrospectively, we're basically going to open the door to, I don't know, 2 million, 3 million people who.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, you know, the immigration rules themselves changed 2 or so times a year, and there is no sort of innate promise that comes with a work visa. And when it comes to sort of public policy changing retrospectively, well, you consider sort of any realm of public policy, whether it's individuals that are on welfare and have made plans going forward on welfare, and then the government comes in and changes the way welfare works, or whether it was when it was looking like inheritance tax was going to change farmers. Farmers had made a sort of plan and a succession plan based on inheritance tax not being introduced. It looked like the government was going to be introducing changes to inheritance tax. So by the very nature of any change in public policy, any change of government policy, there is a retrospective element to it, because people's plans have been predicated on what things are at that time, not what they could very well be in the future. So I don't really, and that seems to be the key argument against this. It seems to be against the Home Secretary's changes to indefinitely to remain, is that it's not fair to change. I just don't think that's a basis really for dictating government policy. Did you
know when we look at this figure of 18 billion over, is it 18 billion over, 15 billion over 18 months, I don't want to sort of put you on the spot here, but do you know what that is as a proportion of all welfare?
It's about 15-16%, I believe, of universal credit payments. Just we don't have data on foreign national sort of use of PIP or housing benefit or so forth. But and you know, people say, oh well, we've got 16% of the population being foreign born, but actually the percentage of the foreign born population who are actually eligible for benefits is you know 5 or 6% of the overall cohort of the population. And then when you consider the you know 18% of Brits on some form of universal credit, but 1 in 3 individuals with indefinite leave to remain are on universal credit. There's a disparity there.
Gosh, that's a huge disparity.
It's a massive disparity, and it really is indicative actually of especially non-European migration, although actually a large part of this figure does come as a result of the Brexit agreement that Theresa May just sort of cack-handedly signed and sort of surrendered left, right and centre. They were so desperate to sort of settle the issue of EU citizens in the UK that they effectively just gave away the kitchen sink to get a deal over the line. Yeah, and the result is this.
It's infuriating. It's baffling. It's mind-boggling, quite frankly. OK, let's take a short break now, but we're going to keep Robert here until 9 o'clock and discuss more brilliant research that he gets up to. Don't go anywhere.
Good morning, Julian. Nice to be back with you again.
Well, I mean, again, extraordinary circumstances. It's the former prince's 66th birthday. He's lost his HRH, he's lost his prince, he's lost his dukedom, lost all his titles, lost his big fancy house in Royal Lodge in Windsor, banished to the Sandringham estate. What was your first reaction when you heard that he had actually been arrested?
Well, at long last, is my reaction. I've been calling out for this, frankly, for nearly 6 years, ever since the allegation emerged.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Across.
Hello, welcome back. Now, Robert, the line's always been, hasn't it? Like you were saying earlier, we need migration for skill shortages. We need these people to do the jobs Brits won't do. First of all, we find out that we're basically not getting any skilled work in terms of the migration. The vast majority of people are actually dependents, whether they're relatives of students. That is baffling. But also, like you said, the argument that we need people to do low-skilled work just cannot be possible. When my mum was growing up in the market town of Evesham, she used to be a fruit picker. University students used to do those things. They used to pull pints. I did that all my life. Work in cafes, collect trolleys, deliver newspapers. I've done all those things. Yeah. You know, a lot of us did growing up back in the day. And the idea that now we need foreigners to do those jobs, it just doesn't stand up to rationality.
No, and it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Once someone has decided that the only answer to labour shortages is more migration, then that becomes the answer for the foreseeable future. It staves off conversations that we do need to have about investing in social care in particular, which has been massively underfunded, and actually it means that sort of if you've got a care home and then a warehouse sets up just down the road from it and is paying 50p more per hour, the labour force at that sort of level of pay is a lot more mobile, and therefore you are going to see individuals flock to the warehouse rather than actually maybe even getting in at the sort of ground floor of a role that they could learn a lot of skills and a lot of sort of rewarding development going forward. So I think we owe it to the British people. We've got 9 million economically inactive working age people in this country. There is no justifiable reason that a country that is in any way match fit would have that number of individuals that they're just happy to see sort of wasting away and not exploiting their, utilising their talents and their ideas and so forth. And also there's a bigger conversation here, and I know some people get hesitant about it, but in certain sections of the economy there is an increasing role that automation can play. There was an ONS report produced a few years ago that suggested in the health in the social care sector, around about 50% of the sort of functions could be automated by 2030.
Yeah.
And that sort of frees up people to provide actually more hands-on care, more rewarding work. They can have higher pay. You don't need to actually constantly get stuck in this labour, low-skilled, low-wage labour trap, and you can actually start actually raising standards and saving costs on some unnecessary overheads, and you actually then end up bringing more people into working in the labour force as well. So I think we're stuck in this paradigm, and I think the way the Guardian is trying to present this report from the Migration Observatory is this kind of idea that, you know, the country will fall apart, we'll have sort of old people wasting away in their beds and so forth if we were to just to simply sort of say, no, we're not doing this anymore. It's completely wrong, and actually there is an element of a stretching target here as well. If you sort of say, no, we are doing this, we're not doing low-skilled, low-wage migration anymore, people will adapt, people will figure things out. This idea that actually the labour market is just sort of a static chessboard and you move the pieces around and everything responds correspondingly. And there's a dynamic element to this as well, which just never gets considered in these kind of conversations.
But also, you know, there are many things I think that can be done politically which would start garnering the results that people out there want to see in Britain. And I think I go back to COVID and all of a sudden we had loads and loads and loads and loads and loads, millions perhaps, of Europeans over here, Eastern Europeans, Central Europeans, and COVID starts and they all go home and they don't come back again. If you were to suddenly remove the rights to claim welfare from foreign nationals, if you were to suddenly prioritise British workers for jobs, you would find naturally, I believe, quite a large exodus. People aren't going to sit around and wait in Britain if they cannot get the handouts, if they can't get the jobs. They will go home.
Well, exactly, and I think actually sort of scrapping indefinite leave to remain will lead to a sustained period, most likely given the large influx that we have seen recently of net negative migration, where we'll see more people leaving than are arriving in the country, just by the very nature of it sort of not being worth their while sticking around. And we did see that. You're absolutely right when it came to EU migrants who corresponded and sort of responded to the Brexit vote and the settlement after that by just returning home. EU migrants are slightly more mobile and do sort of flitter between Britain and the EU than sort of non-EU migrants who are a lot more sticky and sort of stay for longer periods of time.
Right. But then if they cannot be, if they're not being given handouts from the state and they don't have jobs, they will go, because you would, wouldn't you? You're not going to sit there and end up begging on the street when you can go back to wherever it may be. Let's talk now about, oh, so typical, the blimmin' rights groups. Both British and French activists have written to Air France, Albastar, never heard of them, Titan, never heard of them, and Cochendon Airlines, never heard of them either, over their shameful involvement in deportation flights. I mean, these blimmin' bleeding heart lefties, we've seen the sort of danger of them when they become coordinated in the anti-ICE protests in America. Over here, there's still a load of weird wokies. But I remember seeing, oh gosh, the deportees on Thursday staged a hunger strike in protest at people's removal. Fine, don't eat, I don't care.
I've never got the point of hunger strikes.
No,
I've never
it's like, I don't care. If you don't want to eat and want to die from not eating, be my guest. That's your agency as a human being to do that. But it just sort of... I remember watching something when there was a Swedish girl on an aeroplane. There was a guy at the back who was being deported, and some Swedish girls started standing up going, "This is awful. I'm getting off the flight. Everyone should get off the flight. This man is being treated awfully.
Yeah.
He's being sent by..." And then, the flight is stopped, and he's taken off the flight. He was like a serial rapist.
Exactly.
So what are you doing?
And you see that with the ICE videos in Minneapolis as well. You have sort of squawking individuals sort of berating ICE agents, and the ICE agents are just calmly saying, this is a man that's sort of been convicted for 5 child sexual assaults. We're removing him from our country for the betterment of society. This man is an evil in our midst. We don't want him here. Very, very clear case, I think almost anyone with a semblance of morality would agree with, but yet these people are so transfixed in them having some kind of higher moral ground that they still believe that they are entitled to pursue a lot of illegal activities and a lot of sort of obstructing activities. I think probably these letters are almost hidden within them as in a sort of implicit threat. We're going to see a lot more, I think, unfortunately, in this country of sort of well-organised frustration campaigns of immigration enforcement officers.
It will. I mean, this is my worry. If we do get a change of government that's more in line with the sort of programme that we would like to see in the United Kingdom, we will get all the madness that they're seeing over in America for sure.
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately, I think we are in a position where actually we've got sort of structures in place where we can create what Theresa May coined, or was coined unhelpfully under Theresa May, a hostile environment, which makes it sound very scary, a sort of compliance environment where it's difficult for illegal migrants to access services, and actually it's for their betterment to leave the country on their own voluntary basis. And I think hopefully if that's done properly by an incoming centre-right government, they will be able to create a system where a large number of individuals just sort of throw up their hands and go, OK, I'm going to voluntarily remove themselves. Because even when you hear the government saying, we've removed 50,000 people since we came into power, about a third of them are individuals that are already struggling to sort of find work or get housing.
And 50,000 sounds like a big number, but it's a drop in the ocean.
It's an absolute fraction. It's an absolute fraction. And, a lot of them have been paid. And I do believe if an individual sort of isn't known to authorities, there is maybe an incentive for, as they're doing in America, a sort of a small payment scheme if an individual is sort of lurking unbeknown to immigration enforcement.
We'll pay
in
you
the
to
UK.
go.
Yeah, but a lot of individuals, about a third of that 50,000, have just said, I'm finding it too difficult to get a job or to work. And this is even with very modest right-to-work checks and right-to-rent checks. And they've just decided, no, I'm going to take myself
But
off.
this is the thing, if you hand someone from the developing world a grand to leave, and you think, well, actually, if we're paying them benefits, it's going to cost us £1 a month to keep you here. It's actually a cost saving. That £1,000 somewhere like, I don't know, I'll use Bangladesh again, goes a long way, you know? And you've probably got English language skills. When you go back to your home country, you're going to be of the middle classes. You're going to actually have some stature because you're the one who went and lived in Europe. You're the one who lived in Britain.
I do draw the line, though, when it's sort of someone that the authorities have got in custody or has been convicted for, heinous crimes, and we are still paying them £3,000 just so they don't launch an endless procession of appeals and frustrate their deportation.
There should be no appeal. I think it should be a case of you're being deported, no appeal.
Because the reason why it is so difficult, or it costs so much for us to deport people, which is a large reason why governments aren't doing it, is because the process is so protracted. Because
and do they get legal aid automatically? If they've sort of appealing a deportation order once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, do we pay for that? We give them legal aid to do that? Or is it sort of like woke charities paying these lawyers?
So the government has contracts that sort of tells these individuals, oh, these are what your entitlements are. Oh, by the way, a large part of that is legal aid. It is absolutely crazy the amount we spend on legal aid, and I don't think the government is publishing the data.
Easy political fixes, right? Easy political fixes. No more legal aid for challenging deportation. Done.
Well, I just think, quite frankly, actually, if you've entered illegally, I don't really think you should have the right to sort of use the full apparatus of the British.
It should just be, if you enter illegally, you should be deported and told you will never cross the threshold of this country again. You're now on the blacklist. Robert, thank you ever so much. Always delightful having you here. And I love the fact you always make an effort to come into the studio. Pleases me greatly when I've got a warm body on the seat. Right, OK, you lot. It's time for the final hour of the programme, so we're going to have a little bit more fun, perhaps, than we have done in the first 2 hours, and I want to hear from you guys. 03444 99 1000 is the number to call if you want to have a chinwag with me at some point. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message. 8722 is the number if you'd rather send a text message. If you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you text us, or your normal network rate, so basically it's free. Sharing is caring and all the rest of it, so pour yourself the legendary 3-fingered gin and tonic, and I'll see you just after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the programme. What a crazy day it is. Look at that. I'm seeing the footage of Prince Andrew in the back of a police car. He has now been released from prison following 12 hours of questioning. We live in extremely unprecedented times. I love that little factoid, actually, earlier on, that Rafe Hayden Mancuso saying the last monarch or last member of the royal family to be arrested was Charles I. And we all know what happened as a result of that. Not that I'm suggesting that that will have the same natural denouement to this particular narrative, but very unprecedented. Is he now going to be under house arrest? Is he going to end up in court? Could he be in prison? What does this mean for the royal family? What does this mean for Brand Britain on the international stage? Is the international community watching this? What are their thoughts and feelings? So many questions I've got to ask. So let's bring back the brilliant Sun reporter, Thomas Godfrey, who is in Norfolk, live in Sandringham. Hope you're a little bit warmer now. I hope someone gave you a sort of nice, steaming mug of coffee and you wrapped yourself up in some silver foil like you've just finished a marathon. What I want to ask you first of all is, I'm sure you've been chin-wagging with other journalists who are there. Particularly, I want to know what people overseas are saying about all of this. Have you got a sense that this is a doom-laden moment for Brand Britain, or is there a slightly different take on this?
Well, actually, a lot of the media assembled outside Wood Farm here are from Australia, where the King, of course, is the head of state. They're a Commonwealth nation, a nation that actually has the royal family in very high regard generally. And there is a sense of shock from down under at this. There is a sense of shock from across the pond. We've heard President Trump in the last hour or so come out and say that it's very sad that Prince Andrew has been arrested. This is really reverberating around the world. The royal family, as we all know, are a massive part of Brand Britain, and for the presiding image, at least this year so far, of the royal family, of that monarchy brand around across the globe, is tonight Andrew in the back of a police car. I mean, it's an incredible bit of footage, and it will be one of the images that comes to define, if not this year, but this decade, maybe even this century, when it's all said and done. So yes, I think there is a real palpable sense from around the world that this is shocking and just incredibly seismic event for the royal family and also for Britain as a whole.
What have we heard so far from members of the royal family?
The volume, mate.
Oh, something happening there. You still with us, Tom, there, my boy?
Where is it, mate?
I don't know what's going on there. Where's what, mate? I don't know. That's live television for you, isn't it? You can't always get it right in the moment. This is the problem with what we like to call in the industry OBs, which is outside broadcast. So hopefully we'll get Thomas back. I want to know what was going on there. We'll soon find out, no doubt. Dean will be madly dialing up, going, oh, where have you gone? What's this? Oh, no. I can see Dean. Look at that smoke coming out of his ears. We'll get Thomas back. And it would be interesting to know of what the royal family have said, whether any more people have spoken out. Let's do some messages, because thankfully I've got a lovely little basket full of your interactions here that I can just pick out like a tombola. Kieran. Oh, Kieran Fearon, there's my mate. I've been looking forward to you all day. Oh, thanks. What a day of news. Hope Samara is feeling better to take part in your 9 p.m. out. Well, I think you can tell by now that she isn't going to be here, I'm afraid. Thank you for Muriel. Keep up the great work. Flame and Eck, Alex, that's rivaling Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech in reverse. That makes me sound like I'm a leftist. But thank you. I appreciate that. Simon and Sharon Stockport and Charlie the dog. Look, sometimes I just have to get things off my chest. There's absolutely nowhere near Sandringham for the reporters to get a hot coffee or a bacon sandwich. Poor little mites, says Becca. 15 minutes down the road. Poor Thomas Godfrey. Maybe that's what was happening. Tom, were you being given some sort of bacon butty and a coffee?
I wish I was, Alex. No, it's on a very long day. Technology's finally failed me. I'm very sorry about that. But
don't worry.
Yeah, we are back now.
We're all chill here. Don't you worry about that. So basically, before some goblin got in the middle of our broadcast, what I wanted to know from you is sort of the reaction we're hearing from members of the royal family. The king has said, you know, the law's got to follow through its course. I don't know if he said anything more. I don't know if anyone else has said much more. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, the King came out with a statement earlier. He said that the police would have his full and unwavering support in this probe into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. We don't know if the King has personally spoken to his brother, his younger brother by several years, more than a decade between them, Andrew, the youngest of the four children. And we don't know as well if any other members of the royal family will have been in touch or are talking amongst themselves about what this means for them. What we do know is that the King at a London Fashion Week event earlier today, as he has been several times in the last few weeks, was heckled, was asked, what is your reaction to the arrest of your brother? He had nothing to say in that regard beyond the statement he put out, and King Charles in that statement said he wouldn't be commenting further because this is now a live criminal investigation. It's not something that any member of the royal family has really ever faced before, not in modern times for sure. So incredible development.
Yeah, I wonder now what is going to happen next, because one assumes that if the King had his way, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor would be hidden away in the darkest corner of Sandringham, not being seen on his horse, not leaving his house, just buried in an oubliette to sort of conjure up ideas of the old French monarchy back in the day and their favourite torture devices. But the problem with Andrew is he seems to be utterly deluded. This sense of self-aggrandisement, that he thinks he can get through anything in life, that he is totally immune to any accusations, that he can ride his horse, wave to the crowds. It's, I kind of wonder if they're going to, like, barrier up the doors.
Yeah, well, there were reports when Andrew actually moved here from Royal Lodge. He left Royal Lodge early, remember. He was meant to be there for several weeks more than he actually was, to come here to Wood Farm. We know he's going to move to Marsh Farm. He's going right around the farmhouses here in Norfolk. Eventually he'll be in Marsh Farm, if, of course, he's not, the criminal process doesn't go further in the intermediate period. One of the reports said that what sort of was the straw that broke the camel's back for the King was actually the pictures of Andrew going out riding his horse, as if there was sort of nothing wrong in the world and he could go about his daily life as per usual. Obviously, we now know from a criminal standpoint that's not the case, but for the last several months, if not years, we know Andrew has been out of public life. The King reportedly trying to contain, that was the word, the key word, contain his brother here in Sandringham to keep him out of the public eye. We know now, though, that is not going to be the case for the foreseeable future, because it may be that there's a second interview. It may well be that the police come back here at some point in the future. All of these options are open to the authorities now, and remember, this could just be the start. There are still other police forces across the country assessing other information, some of which relates to very lurid accusations involving trafficking and multiple airports as well. And we know Andrew has denied wrongdoing in relation to that part of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But the key point really from here is that this is going to go on and on and on. And it will drag Andrew down, but whether it drags the rest of the monarchy down remains to be seen.
No, I know. And actually, the sort of allegations of the trafficking and young women being brought to royal residences, if that's the next one to explode, that is devastating, utterly devastating. Thomas, am I your last hit for the evening?
Are investigating in relation to this. We should be clear that is a separate probe. This is what's happened today is solely about misconduct in public office. We know those assessments are ongoing, though. Yeah, no, thank you for that clarification. A professional journalist you are as well. Am I your last hit for this evening, Thomas? Do you get to go and snuggle up in a nice cosy pub bar now?
I very much hope so. I think there's a hotel, thankfully, 10 minutes down the road. It's pretty rural out here.
Isn't it?
Actually, some of the people we've spoken to saying that they didn't want Andrew at Royal Lodge in Windsor. They don't really want Andrew here. He's not really wanted anywhere, and I suspect they probably wouldn't have even wanted him at the police station in Elsham, about an hour away. He clearly didn't want to stay overnight there because he's managed to hot-foot it back, and it would have been a sort of extra blow, I'm sure, maybe not to the process, but to his ego, if he, after all of this today, he had to spend overnight in a police cell. That was a very real possibility. As it turns out, in fact, he used a back entrance here at Wood Farm to get in. He managed to evade the majority of the press back, and the few photographers who had gone round the back entrance here will
the Range Rover carrying him was going far too quickly to get a sort of similar photo to the one of him coming out the police station, where I have to say, tonight he looks like a man utterly defeated.
He does indeed. Thomas, thank you ever so much. Go and snuggle up in a beautiful Norfolk pub. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous part of the world, extremely rural, and I must say one of my favourite accents in the country. It's crazy, like being a West Country girl, it's like this wraparound when it comes to accents, the West Country accent and then the sort of East Anglian Norfolk accent sound really similar, different but similar. It's like, how did that happen with a load of different stuff in the middle? A wonderful, wonderful part of the world. And it's always, I remember my days of being a reporter going out on the beat, and when there's big events like this and you end up having to stay somewhere overnight and you all go to a hotel and it's all the other reporters there. It just becomes like a little journalist Big Brother house. Oh, it's a fun thing to do. If you're young and you've got the energy, it's a great job indeed. OK, let us take some calls in just a moment. If you want to be part of having a chat, 03444 99 1000 is the number to dial. It's your normal network rate. That's also the number to send me a message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 8722. If you'd like to send me a text, like talk before you message. OK, let's kick things off by speaking to Roy in Hampshire. Hi, Roy.
Hello, Alex.
Hello, my love. OK, what do you want to talk about?
About our beloved Prime Minister, the traitor.
No.
Just you wouldn't have heard, Lovey, but I was just switched over and I was listening to GB News.
Don't you say that name to me. Ah!
No, well, it was Jacob's programme, and he had the guy on there from The Standard. Apparently, the Russians have signed a secret deal with Mauritius to build a base on the Chagos Islands.
Oh, no, like, seriously? Of course they have. I'm telling you, all of this stuff, that original deal, this is where I've been saying we got to look at these barristers. Phillips Sands, up you come. Time to be cross-examined in a committee in Parliament. He should be dragged in and said, who were you dealing with? When did you write it? Who was also part of those negotiations? By what legal footing? How much money are you making? Who's paying you? Yeah, we need to know these things. If that man is not called to be cross-examined in the Palace of Westminster, i.e. a parliamentary committee, then we are massively failing. We're being extremely negligent.
But he's a traitor, Alex, to this country. Everything he's done since he's been Prime Minister has put this country down.
I agree. I do wonder that. I think I'm seriously, it might sound tinfoil hat, but I am beginning to think that certainly the cohort around the Prime Minister, who seems to be very influential over him, their main priority is not representing British interests, and I wonder about their international connections. I really do, which is why I think we need to start cross-examining these people. It's not okay to have a team of lawyers making such big decisions that impact upon our national interests and not actually be able to ask them of whether there are conflicts of interest, what their affiliations are. This isn't how a democracy works.
But, you know, getting back to the Labour Party, the Labour MPs, surely most of them, they love their country like I do. Why don't they walk across the floor and join the Tories and vote this so-and-so out?
Right. The thing is that, I don't know, it's a funny thing, politics. We're made to be so tribal, aren't we? My team, not your team. Yeah, let's see.
They'd get voted in again because their consensus is...
Well, they'd be on the right side of history. Yeah, perhaps you're right on that. But I still think we have a legacy media who are not doing their due diligence. That I will stand by that to the end of my days, that this is a massive scandal, a big crisis. And where are the exposés? I don't understand. I don't understand why we've got such an inert media class. Roy, thank you ever so much for your call. Let's read a few messages now. Keep those coming in as well. One other thing that might follow on from the Andrew affair, a warning to Harry and Meghan that the removal of titles and privileges can happen in a way that would have been unimaginable even 5 years ago. Well, they're no longer, they're the sort of enemy number one of the House of Windsor, are they? Evening, Alex. I followed your career for some time. You're one of the most conscientious and balanced broadcasters I've seen. Well, some people think I'm a monster. More than that, you're one of the toughest and most resolute. I know you will ride the current wave of deplorable behaviour of others. Chin up and keep doing you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do often say that, you know, I do try and be a journalist at the very least. And if people don't like the questions I ask, sorry. If if then the answers that you give didn't work out in your favour, that's not my fault. Okay? And actually all these people making a noise online, if they think they're being big and smart and clever, I'm just looking at them going, grow up. You know, you're talking about the future of this country, setting up a political party. How old are you? 12 years old? Oh, look, ha, 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 I've made a meme out of her. You're sad. Really, I'm not upset by this. I'm upset on your behalf because, frankly, it's embarrassing, for crying out loud. Evening, Alex. When scrolling through X, I'm becoming increasingly concerned by how far to the right Restore Britain and its supporters are willing to go, including posts suggesting support for Restore's bans on kosher and halal meat, not out of concern for animal welfare, but of comments such as they'll go home in their droves. Many Jews and Muslims were born here and Britain is their home. This sort of rhetoric is making me deeply uncomfortable. I would agree in the fact we need to look at whether we keep non-stun slaughter, because I don't believe we should have animal welfare standards for Brits and animal welfare standards for non-Brits. But someone pointed something out the other day, all this banging the drum for non-stun slaughter. Mr. Lowe loves going out shooting. Right? You don't stun a deer before you shoot it. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is, frankly. But no, I'm off X for Lent, by the way. I'm not even going to retweet the show tweets, which is a shame, because I've got a nice, tasty following. And maybe I will do that, but that means I'm on it. How do you do this? I don't know. But the other night, I think I want to give up something for Lent, and it's got to be something that's been quite inherent in my life. And it's somewhere that's just become quite uncomfortable and unpleasant and not constructive at present. I've always been a huge fan of the platform and I will go back on, but it popped into my head and I was like, that's it. 40 days of no social media. Get in. I can't wait. It's going to feel like a sort of neurological spa holiday where I get to think about things other than people abusing me online. Woohoo! So put that in your pipe and smoke it, you haters. Evening, Alex. It's clear as day that Starmer's agenda is to destroy the UK and eradicate our history and culture. He took the knee and ploughed on with his two-tier strategy. I'm crestfallen and frustrated by this regime, along with the majority of the population that haven't woken up to this. From Mark in Crouch End. But there are always sensible political solutions, as Robert Bates and I were discussing. Don't be drawn into the sort of like, we just need a change of government who are going to start doing sensible things. We don't need to start going tonto and becoming like, I don't know, 1970s Ethiopia right now. Let's not do that. Hey, Alex, great show as always. Thank you, Adam and Thanet. I love military aircraft as well. So many variations out there. I don't think it'll be long before they're in proper use. Missed having no Weird Hour yesterday. Hope it hasn't been axed. Adam, the thing is, Weird Hour, we want to keep Weird Hour. We love Weird Hour. But for Weird Hour to work, we've got to be able to book a comedian for the last hour of the show to come and sit here. We've been playing with the format for the last month, and it's not always easy booking people in advance. People are busy. They've got lots of commitments. They live all over the country. I won't be doing this show next week. Just word to the wise. I'm giving myself some time off because I've been doing it now for the last 4 weeks and haven't had a life. Don't have evenings anymore. So I've sort of said, you know what, need to decompress, need to go say hello to my brother, my best mate Belinda. It'd be great to actually go and see some of my friends. So I've sort of said, look, count me out for next week. I'm going to go and live some life for a moment because I kind of feel like I deserve it. And that was actually before all of this hoo-ha blew up. So it's not interrelated with that either. Oh, you can tell me when I come back after however long I decide to cool my heels what they've all been saying about me online. Oh, look, we've won. She's been cancelled. They've taken her off air. They've cancelled her. She's been sacked. That's what they're going to say, isn't it? Don't believe them. I'm literally taking a holiday. And you won't see me taking a holiday because I'm having my break from X. You really have to start asking, is Starmer purposefully trying to destroy the UK? Starmer and the Fabian Society need investigating and seeing if they have links to China or Russia. Exactly. And what Roy was just saying, that has been spoken about potentially Russia wanting to build a military base on the Chagos Islands. I'm telling you, I've said from the beginning, eyes on this one. This is the big one that I think could blow, that could take down the government. Then we're going to have some fun, aren't we? Then I'm going to be begging to be back in the studio because it will be elections. Right, OK, let's take a wee small break now. But after that, you're going to be delighted to know my lovely protégé, the political journalist Ellie Hodges. She's like mini-me. Maybe she can come and do my job for a while I go and find some sun. But she's going to be joining me right now to give me a bit of a perspective from the youth of the country. That's after this.
morning,
Thank you for
Julia.
joining
Nice
us.
to be back with you again.
Well, I mean, again, extraordinary circumstances. It's the former prince's 66th birthday. He's lost his HRH, he's lost his prince, he's lost his dukedom, lost all his titles, lost his big fancy house in Royal Lodge in Windsor, banished to the Sandringham estate. What was your first reaction when you heard that he had actually been arrested?
Well, at long last, is my reaction. I've been calling out for this, frankly, for nearly 6 years, ever since the allegation emerged.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Loads of messages coming in. Let's do a few more of these. Alex, why don't you give up gin and cider for Lent? Well, because I need those to function. And I did actually contemplate doing 0 alcohol for Lent, and then I realised doing 0x for Lent was a better option. Ignore the clowns, enjoy your holiday, says Lawburn in Dumfries. I definitely will. And the Andrew saga taking spotlight off Mandelson and Starmer. Isn't it just? I know. Phil says Starmer will be rubbing his hand with all of this Andrew stuff. Yes, 2 people now saying the same thing. It is correct. Very handy for Starmer and Mandelson. Anyway, let's move on to other things. Ellie Hodges, how are you doing, my little darling
I'm great.
heart?
How are you? I'm
very well. I always love seeing you. Now, you're my sort of inside crack into what the youth are thinking and doing. ITV has done a poll, and it says that 80%, over 80% of 16 to 24-year-olds would vote to rejoin the EU. This doesn't surprise me, because they've always been told it's benign and benevolent and it's the key to the world and you can go work abroad and it's sunshine and happiness. They're not told the reality of that, you know, bureaucratic behemoth, which is far from benign and benevolent over in Brussels, which has frankly done a great deal of harm to this continent. Do you find that you are sort of isolated amongst your peer group for your politics?
Yeah, I would say that the reason why young people are so pro-Europe is because they've been, especially 16 to 24-year-olds, they've been told their whole life that Brexit is the root of all of their problems. It's the reason they can't get a house. It's the reason everything's so expensive. It's the reason they can't get a job. And if you're being told that all the time through either the media or education, you know, school, university, I think it's like 82% of teachers voted for Remain. So if you're being told all of that stuff all the time, why would you come out and be like, yeah, I'm so pro-Brexit, I would have voted Brexit? Because you wouldn't have. If you're being told all the time that Brexit is the most horrible thing ever and it's caused all of your problems in life.
Yeah, no, of course. And we do have I remember looking at some sort of research done that showed that, I can't remember what the proportion was, but a lot, the majority of teachers would vote for the Green Party. And they are radical. When I was at school, I can't remember having any inclination of what the politics of my teachers were. I actually can't remember thinking, oh, well, that teacher's very left-wing, that teacher's right-wing. They just taught. But did you find when you were at school that your teachers were politicising things?
Oh, definitely, all the time. And I think the thing is as well, sometimes people think when you say that teachers politicise things and that they push political points, they're saying, vote Labour, vote Green. It's not really that. It's more like pushing ideas, like I've said before, you know, white privilege, all of these kind of things that push you towards certain parties without realising. Like, I just remember, I can't remember, you know, what year it was, but I remember a teacher saying to me, oh, Boris Johnson's just awful, he's so bad. And for no reason, and I remember I wasn't really political at all at that point, so you take it in without realising, and that's what happens to a lot of people at universities. They go to uni not really caring about politics, and then by the end of their time at uni they're going to, you know, Free Palestine protests because they've been taught this all the time, because all of their friends think it, all of their teachers think it, and it's part of like university culture. And this is the same with this thing, with 80% of young people pro-Europe.
It's funny, I remember, this is a true story, I remember in a geography lesson happened once. There's a sort of discussion with the geography teacher and me saying, when you think about it, there's no such thing as borders. You know, there's just land and sea and humanity. I changed, didn't I?
Just a bit, just a tiny bit.
Just a little bit. But this is the thing, you do grow up. A lot of young people don't understand the complexities of politics. They don't understand. You know, they look at the EU and go, it's Europe together, isn't that nice? And they think of their family holiday to Spain, or they think of how much they want to go and eat pasta, or, you know. But it's not, do you think that, because one thing I do think, though, is I didn't know the political inclinations of my teachers. Surprising that I ended up in politics, because I used to love it as a kid, as a very little kid. I used to come home from primary school and want to watch whatever the equivalent of Politics Live was. On the telly about, you know, 3:30 in the afternoon. I used to sit there with my mum and do impressions of the front bench, weirdly. There was an MP called Tom King. You wouldn't know him, but I used to sort of do this weird sort of gurning Tom King impression, brilliantly, apparently, as a kid. And then I remember, you know, going with the local MP to have a tour of the House of Commons. My parents used to debate politics at the dinner table. My mum never liked Thatcher. My dad thought she was great. But I wasn't very political myself, you know. I used to sort of come up with philosophical ideas. I remember going to university and seeing some American crying, you know, running through the Students' Union because George Bush had been voted as president. So, hug me, I'm a Democrat. I can just remember thinking, you're weird.
I think that's because of social media as well, though.
Yes, I just want to, kids more politicised now.
And I think I've noticed, so these like social media influencers, they then go into these political things because usually it gives them more followers a lot of the time. So I'll see someone that has never posted anything political ever, and their brand is about, you know, what clothes to buy, for example, so randomly post Free Palestine, and people see that because a lot of young women as well look to these older women who are social media influencers. I don't know if that's actually a real job. You know, that's a different discussion. But a lot of young women look up to them as their role models. So when they see them put up these political things, even though they have absolutely no clue what they're talking about because they're just doing it usually to appeal for their followers, or it's because of brand deals, so they're making sure that they're following whatever the latest, you know, political trend is, because a lot of the time it's just about whatever's trending. It's not actually about caring about the issue.
You see sometimes when you get like something trending on X and then there'll be someone's done the hashtag, like the hashtag, I don't know, Starmer out, and they're like, you know, it's like some sort of soft porn or something. What? But no, it does strike me that young people today are far more political than I ever was growing up. And what's interesting here is there's another ITV poll. ITV used to be sound. I used to work for ITV. I used to love them. But here we go. That Farage is just as disliked as Keir Starmer among young people, despite Reform UK's high poll rating across the general population. It's always been the case that young people are more left-wing than older people, and you know, we know our reasons why, because you wake up when someone's, you know, starting taxing you, your attitudes start to change somewhat. But you know, young people say that they like Zach Polanski. Again, he's a caricature. He's like, I go to Heaven nightclub, he looks like a cartoon. But at one point, Farage was doing really well on TikTok. He was sort of known as the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
I think with this, it's that the young people that support reform, I find this when you go to like their rallies and conferences, there's like a real passionate group of like young men usually, and I think they have a lot of really passionate young voters, but they don't have the same amount of volume that Labour and not only the Conservatives but more Labour and the Greens have built up over years. I don't think reform have that yet.
Do you think it's a good thing that 16-year-olds get the vote?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's actually one of the worst things, because we just spoke about education and how teachers push their political ideology. What happens when you give 16-year-olds the vote? Do you not think that's going to get so much worse?
And then, so this is the thing, you've given 16-year-olds the vote, but then you've banned them, banned under 16s from having social media. It's like, are they adults, are they children, what are they?
So then where do they get that information from as well?
The mad green voting teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I can see how this is all shaping up, can't you? Do you think that social media should be banned for under 16s?
I'm usually like not in favour of banning things, so I don't think it should be. But I do think things need to be put in place to make sure that, you know, because there are some really, really dangerous things on social media now, and something definitely needs to be put in place. Whether that just, I think ultimately it's the parents' responsibility. responsibility. It's not the state's responsibility. Because when you start banning social media, you're basically saying the state is your parent, not your own parent.
It's true. I think we do need to have something. I mean, I don't know. I quite like a good ban sometimes, me. But I've said for a long time that social media is really messing with people, and not just young people, but young people have plastic evolving brains, and this sort of tribalisation, the balkanisation. I can see why so many young men sort of think that we're at the end of the universe and we need to go out and fight for things and act like absolute little lunatics because they live on social media.
But we've seen that recently with loads of young men being completely radicalised and not just being centre-right, but being very literal extremists.
This trans thing and kids thinking they're in the wrong body wouldn't happen if they weren't on social media.
As well,
the sexualisation of children would be greatly reduced if they weren't on social media. Mental health and people thinking they've got ADHD, OCD, PTSD, all of the acronyms wouldn't happen if they weren't
because people
on social
self-diagnose
media.
because they saw one TikTok video saying if you're a bit fidgety then you have ADHD.
So I do think that there is a public health question to be asked, and maybe my position would be sometimes when you haven't seen the long-term impact of something, the safer thing to do is say let's stop. Instead of Silicon Valley's mantra of move fast and break things, when the things being broken are young people's characters and mental health and sanity, I kind of think, but I don't know. I don't know what I think about this. I do think parents should be the ones taking ultimate responsibility, but it's very difficult in the world now. And, once someone's left the front door with a smartphone, how can you stop them from doing stuff? And I know from looking at my brother's kids, who are all sort of babies, really, when they come and visit, they pick up my phone and they know how to use my phone better than I do.
But it's not even just social media as well. So I used to work as a waitress for a bit at a restaurant, and I remember there would be kids come in that were literal babies. I mean, either I don't know, maybe 1 up to 6 years old, and they'd be sitting there in front of an iPad the whole entire time they were at the restaurant and just staring at it, and I thought that's surely not good for the child at all.
Do you have some family dinners where you debate things over the roast and things like that?
Yeah, of course, always.
Yeah, that's how it should be. I think everyone's being stretched in too many directions, and the idea is just sitting young people in front of screens instead of parenting.
I have so many memories of when I was younger, of all my family going to the pub, and there'd be like a climbing frame in the garden, and I'd just go and play on that for hours and hours. I'd meet other kids my age as well, and it would be great, and I learned a lot of my social skills probably from that as well.
So there's a brilliant child psychologist called Jonathan Haidt who's basically said once upon a time kids would go out, scuff knees, build tree houses, form little clubs, societies, whatever, fight, play cricket together, but all these things involve group work, communication, diplomacy, conflict resolution. And now too many young people, they don't even like speaking on the phone, for crying out loud. I'm like, that's sad to me. That's heartbreaking.
It is. It's so sad. But then you can't blame the parents as well now, because if you live, I think wherever you live now, why would you let your kid go out the whole entire day, not knowing where they are, and play out on the streets? It's not safe anymore.
Yeah, we had a great little system. We built a tree house in the field nearby, which is now like just a housing estate. That's gone. We used to be the final frontier of Gloucester. I used to be able to sort of leave my house and go on wild bike rides to old air bases in the middle of nowhere, but no, it's all housing estates now, of course it is. But we had like this really cool tree house, and we all had our own little assigned roles. Someone was lookout. My job, because I love art, I love drawing, I'd be like sketching all the sort of flora and fauna that would be seen and keeping a record.
That's so good though. That's so good, because you build social skills by doing that as well.
Yeah, you do, and this is it. You do learn to sort of value each other's skills and so on and so forth, and work together as a team. Really interesting conversation. Don't you go near? Let's keep you, shall we? You want to be kept?
Of course.
I thought you might like to. We're going to take a short break now, but after the break we're going to be talking about what is going on in America, because rumour has it Trump will be ready to strike Iran by Saturday. No thanks to the British, it seems. So a lot to talk about. Also, Donald Trump is apparently going to help Britons bypass online safety laws. The US State Department is apparently launching an online portal to allow Europeans to access banned content. What does that mean? Is it a good idea? I just don't know. But let's discuss it after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, sorry, hello, you're back. I'm back. We're all back. My gosh, sorry, my assistant producer, Matt, Dean has a day off on a Friday. That's because he also works on Weekend Breakfast. And the guy's got to go and get absolutely monstered at some point, doesn't he? That liver doesn't corrode itself. So Matt, the assistant producer, is like, oh, I've seen this great story for tomorrow. And I really want to talk about it now, but I'm not going to because it'll ruin it. But it's going to be very much a Freaky Friday story. It's good. It's really up my street. It's a big one. I'm excited. He's already there booking the guests. I can see him getting into this one. So I'm not allowed to talk about that because it's just sort of like spoiling the surprise for tomorrow. Oh, let's talk about the royal family. Do young people like the royal family?
I just don't think they care.
Really?
I think it's as simple as that. I don't think there's any real excitement around Charles either, so that's probably a factor in why young people just don't care.
I tell you what the problem is for your generation. There's no one in the royal family that's hot to have a crush on.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah, that's the problem. When I was growing up, so William's the same age as my brother.
William, when he was younger.
He was so fit.
Yeah, he was.
Like, all the girls fancied William. And so it's like constant, like Heat magazine, all of these things, you know, just 17, William. And when it's finally like, oh, he's got a girlfriend, everyone's like, no! You know, it was like, you know, learning that Take That had split up. And I kind of think that the generation before me, God, it sounds awful saying this now, but the eye candy would have been blimmin' Andrew. I know. But there's sort of like a generational gap now in the royal family where we don't really have...
Yeah, no, there isn't anyone.
No, because William and Kate's kids are too young.
Yeah, they're like really young, and then William's now like bald.
There's no one in the middle, is there?
No.
They need to think about this, the royal family, as PR. They need to stagger their creating of generations.
Yeah, and also I think that, like, for me anyway, I'm not as bothered about the royal family now Charles is there because, as I said, there's no real excitement around him. William and Kate, though, I love Kate. I think she's so amazing. She's so classy. Her outfits are always great. I really like her. She's no problem either.
She's got that poise. I reckon from things I've heard, I think she's quite a hoot as well.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, she's very poised on the outside, but I've heard she's good fun to hang out with.
Night out with Kate.
But I tell you, a lot of people don't. The coolest parts about King Charles are not known. This is what really annoys me because there's so much great upsell for the king. Like, I've never been a big fan. He hasn't been my favourite royal. But the more I've learnt about him, I'm like, why aren't we told this stuff? So let me put some things to you and see what you think about this. Did you know he's a very good artist? And does watercolour paintings. They're brilliant. Does all these landscapes, paints everywhere he goes, sells his paintings and prints of his paintings at Highgrove. Yeah, even the prints are a lot of money. Yeah. But his paintings are wonderful. So there's fact one, which isn't the most exciting of facts. I'm building up.
It's going to get better.
Oh, I'm building up. Fact two, he patches up his clothes. Have you ever seen him with this, like, he's got a barber jacket that he's had for like 60 years and some other sort of duster coat he's had for like, you know, all his life.
That's probably because he likes recycling everything as well, because he's like crazy about the climate. He's like talked to plants when he was like in his 20s.
Exactly, he looks like Stig of the Dump. His wardrobe, I mean, Oxfam wouldn't even accept them clothes. They'd be like, nah, mate, it's too tatty. We're not having that. You should Google this and look at pictures of him with all his patches, and you just see absolute ledge. I love that. I think that's so kooky and humble and fun.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I feel like it's not the most exciting thing in the world, though.
Oh, I like that.
You got very excited about that.
Because, you know, when he's going out doing his kingly stuff, he sort of, you know, puts on his proper royal regalia and looks smart. But when he's knocking about at home, he's literally like, I don't know.
It's really interesting when you think, I wonder
himself.
Like, what the royals wear at home, though. What's their, like, I can't imagine, like, Charles in, like, a tracksuit or something.
No, Charles isn't a tracksuit. No, he's just barber jacket and ancient
Always
cords.
in a barber jacket. He sleeps in a barber jacket.
That one mark, I think he's only got like 3 things in his wardrobe. He's a simple man. I like that. Okay, so you didn't like that factoid either, so I'm going to try you on my third and final attempt for you to find the king cool. Did you know he's got a specially converted, I think it's an Aston Martin car, British car,
that's actually...
which runs on biofuel made of old wine.
I've heard this. What?
Old wine! He's got like a cool little car that is powered by old wine instead of petrol.
That's definitely cool. That's the best one out of those facts.
I love
definitely.
it. Matt just says in my ear, drink driving. Oh, you're on fire tonight, Matthew. But I just think that's awesome.
That is cool. That's cool.
I wish some of these things about the king were actually known.
Why aren't they being pushed a bit more?
Yeah.
The royal family have a TikTok account. Get that out.
Who's your favourite royal?
Ooh.
It's going to be the king now, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's... I think it's Kate. It's Kate.
Is it
definitely.
Kate? That makes sense.
Yeah.
She's just so poised. My favourite always has been, always will be. It's got to be Princess Anne. See,
actually, she's cool. She's cool. Actually,
we don't get exposed to Anne enough. She's such a legend.
She's cool.
And the Tyndalls, they're amazing.
Yeah, they're funny as well.
I see them at my train station.
Oh my god.
They live down the road.
No way.
Yeah, I'm in the cool part of the Cotswolds, not all the Londoners in Oxfordshire. I'm where all the royal family
Go
are.
and make small talk with them.
They're all knocking about in my area. It's like full of proper people. But no, I sometimes I'm standing at the train station. They're just there on the platform. I'm like, all right.
That's fair enough to them though, that they're kind of living half a normal life.
They're tracksuit wearing royals.
Are they?
Yeah, man. I mean, Mike Tyndall lives in a tracksuit, surely.
Yeah,
he's an ex-rugby player. He loves the trackie.
True.
Yeah, which I think they're very cool.
They're quite normal as well compared
They're
to
super
the
normal.
other
They're
royals.
dead normal. They always have been. And Princess Anne, apparently, like in my neck of the woods, it floods a lot and it gets very cold, like, you know, like now. And when people have said that when, you know, some of the villages get cut off with flooding and it's cold, Anne gets in a battered up old Land Rover and a barber, of course. And goes about delivering firewood and shopping and pints of milk. She knows the villages. She knows all where the pensioners live. She just goes and does it. She's just a proper. She's
nice.
an absolute boss.
She is. She's cool as well. Every time you see her, she's always like strutting along as well.
So yeah, like I said, my PR advice to the royal family right now is put Andrew Mountbatten wins in an oubliette. Get Anne out, roll her around the place. Let's get in some military things, some tattoos. Let's get on horseback, guns. You know, that amazing hair she's always had. Let's do a documentary on King Charles' recycled wardrobe and his biofuel. Let's get all these brilliant, quirky English eccentricities out in the fore and forget that creature exists who's really ruining the brand of Britain. Thanks, Els. We're going to take a short break now, and as promised, when we come back, big news looming on the horizon. Is America now prepared to strike Iran? We've been waiting on tenterhooks to see what might happen. It appears that things are now pointing in that direction. Diplomacy doesn't seem to be getting anyone anywhere. We're going to be discussing that with the excellent Colonel Simon Diggins after this.
Good morning, Julian. Nice to be back with you again.
Well, I mean, again, extraordinary circumstances. It's the former prince's 66th birthday. He's lost his HRH, he's lost his prince, he's lost his dukedom, lost all his titles, lost his big fancy house in Royal Lodge in Windsor, banished to the Sandringham estate. What was your first reaction when you heard that he had actually been arrested?
Well, at long last, is my reaction. I've been calling out for this, frankly, for nearly 6 years, ever since the allegation emerged.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Wow, geopolitically things are heating up. We've been so distracted by matters domestic and matters Epstein that everyone's forgotten that we could be gearing, well, not we, America could be gearing up to bomb Iran. Let's speak now to Colonel Simon Diggins. He's a brilliant, brilliant man, military and defence analyst. Simon, great to have you on the programme. First of all, where are we at with it? Well, where are we at? Where's America at with Iran? Because there seems to have been this effort to have some sort of diplomacy with Tehran, which to me never seems to really go anywhere. You can't negotiate with a terrorist. So what do you think that the next step is going to be?
Alex, good evening to you. I think it could well be, as you predicted, a move towards some kind of conflict. I think the diplomacy was genuine to see whether Iran would actually back down, would actually ensure that its current nuclear program could not be used to produce nuclear weapons. But I think nobody really had any great hope that would come to the case. We do know the attacks last year were reasonably successful, but they were not as initially promised and boasted by Trump, completely destroying the program. That did not actually happen. And so Iran has continued with its nuclear program. We understood that last October, the Ayatollah gave authorization to develop what he called militarized nuclear weapons, which I think the aim would be that they would be less visible to the intelligence facilities, particularly of Israel and the US. And they have massively reinforced and rebuilt their ballistic missile program, of which the most powerful ballistic missiles are dual capable. In other words, are capable of launching ballistic missiles. And yes, the UK bases are well within their range. The sovereign base there is in Cyprus, which is one, I think, the arguments the government's having with the US at the moment are well within their range. So we are a target. And
right. Is that so? This is what there's two questions I was going to ask, and I think they sort of both can be asked simultaneously, really. First of all, I was going to ask, was the initial hesitancy, because at first Donald Trump said, right, if you hurt a single hair on anyone's head among these anti-regime protests, we're going to come after you big time. And then didn't. And I'd heard that, well, perhaps there'd been some intelligence coming from Israel saying, if you do that, then the retaliation will be against us, or etc. And then, again, same thing with the UK saying, do not use US Air Force bases to launch these strikes, including RAF Fairford, probably the main principal US air base in the United Kingdom, which was used, as I understand, sort of quite a lot during the Gulf Wars, etc., and fighting ISIS. Is that because we're being difficult with America and difficult with Trump, or do you think actually one of two things might be happening, that we would be at risk, we would then be in the crosshairs for retaliatory strikes, or is there something else going on that I don't fully understand?
No, well, I think we're always in the crosshairs. I mean, the Iranians, rather like the Russians, have got a view that, that while the great Satan may be America, we're the little Satan, and they have a view of us which I think is more derived from sort of Ian Fleming, MI6, and James Bond than actually than the reality that we're the hand inside the glove that manoeuvres the US. I think the issue with the protest was the recognition that we did not have, and particularly the US, did not have particularly enough missile defence in place. And given the preponderance of missiles which the Iranians have, as I said, they have over 3,000 ballistic missiles, plus a whole range of drones and anti-shipping missiles, then what the US could launch at the Iranians could well be responded to with a ballistic missile. So I think that was a slightly different issue. I think it was unfortunate that Trump did what he did and pulled back from there. But there is an issue now about the UK. The UK did not support the attacks against Iran last year, and I think the government's trying to use the same justification this year. But they are also talking complete nonsense. I mean, I'm going to quote you if you don't mind. This is what they said this evening, the government said, Iran must never be able to develop a nuclear weapon, and our priority is security in the region. That's a government statement, but at the same time, they are apparently denying the US the use of British bases. Those two things are incompatible.
Right.
Neither Iran can't have it, or they can.
So this is the thing. Why? Is that because there would be, I'm asking from a vested interest here. I live down the road from Fairford. I literally am just like, I drive past Fairford every single day when I'm commuting home. It is, I see the military aircraft coming in and out of that airbase. So if all of a sudden bombers are launched from Fairford and whew, you know, a sort of horrible Iranian missile comes in retaliation, I want to know because I might have to go hide in my cellar. Is that really a risk, or is this political?
No, I don't think that's a risk. I don't think the base in the UK directly are at risk, but UK bases, particularly sovereign bases, the two sovereign base areas in Akrotiri are, and of course we've got other bases around the region. We have bases in the Gulf, as did the US have got, and they are within range and risk of Iranian retaliation. But it's a question of what do we do? Do we sit there and wait for the Iranians to produce a nuclear bomb? And we were told last June that they were within weeks of being able to produce a nuclear weapon. They had from their stocks of uranium, it was enriched to nearly 60%. That's 12 times the requirement for a civil nuclear power program. You know, the only reason you enrich uranium to 60% plus is because you're going to produce a nuclear weapon. It doesn't need, it now needs a very small additional increase up to 90%, and then you have a nuclear capable missile which they can use. They're that close, and I think that's what Netanyahu said to President Trump last summer. And we're back where we are now. They have managed to replenish their ballistic missile stocks, and they've not been able to close down. We've not been able to close down their nuclear program. I think that's therefore we should be absolutely on side with the Americans and say we're going to support you because this is what this is. You know, international law be damned. You know, the Iranians don't give a damn about international law. And here we are pretending, you know, that the 1st Battalion, the Matrix Chambers pen pushers are going to stop it. It ain't going to happen. You know, only thing that's going to stop the Iranians is force, and we should use them.
Let's talk about the Matrix Chambers, and let's talk about Chagos. Donald Trump again has done a sort of U-turn on this. I think he's just sort of getting drips and drops of more and more information coming out. I am deeply concerned. I personally think that some of the KCs who have drawn up this legislation, people who are friends with the Prime Minister, it would appear, in his circle of influence, all come from similar barristers' chambers. Some people seem to have potentially taken a lot of money on behalf of working for the Mauritian government. There's concerns that China, a great ally of Mauritius, can then infiltrate the security around the vital American airbase. Also conversation now that Russia might sign some sort of deal with Mauritius because they're a great ally of getting a base on the island. All just a big screaming mess. Do you think it's about time we hauled those lawyers in front of a parliamentary committee?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the motivation of those sort of lawyers is completely beyond me. I think they genuinely believe, and they believe themselves, that international law should sit above national law, above national sovereignty, and is somehow a kind of iconic and untouchable thing. But we talk about the rules-based order. The rules-based order arose at the end of the Second World War and was reinforced by hard power. What we've done over the years is remove the hard power and left this so-called international order. And funny old thing, people have discovered it is literally paper thin, and you can punch a hole through it whenever you want to. And that's the situation we are now in. But we've still got a government with Keir Starmer, with Hamer, and people like Philip Sands, who is the kind of lead advocate for what's going on in the Chagos Islands, who genuinely believe that the directions of international law are more important than our real national security, and that's just simply wrong. I mean, it is such a false position to be in, and it's naive. But the consequences are real world consequences. We're not able to secure something we need for ourselves, and they're worried about what, frankly, a paper tiger, an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice that the occupation of the Chagos Islands may still be illegal. I think it's complete nonsense, but that's what they're relying on.
From where I'm sitting, I can see a government that seems to want to befriend China to an extreme degree, a government that is not taking America's side against Iran, a government that hasn't prescribed the IRGC for whatever reason when the EU has, a government that just likes shouting the word Russia, but again is perpetrating a domestic energy program that means that indirectly we'll be funding the Russian war machine because we're not drilling our own gas and oil. From where I'm standing, I worry about the sort of relationships people in that government or connected to that government might have with hostile states. Again, Prince Andrew arrested. We've all stopped talking about Mandelson. That is a huge scandal.
Yeah. I mean, I think where they are and where we've got ourselves to is it's kind of like the apotheosis of awfulness of coming through from behind. You know, I think this process has been ongoing for a number of years, but we just happen now to have as a government, basically it's a government by lawyers, not by law, and not by the power that needs to underpin law. And I think that's exactly the situation we've got ourselves into, and it's just simply naive. I mean, as I said, you know, the so-called rules-based order was backed up by hard power. What we've done is eliminate our hard power and pretended the international law is still there. I mean, another good example, Iran is now the sort of vice chairman of the United Nations Human Rights Council. I mean, it's a joke, Alex, but it's sad. It's absolutely shameful, the situation we've got ourselves into, and it's our security and our people's safety and security of the future that is going to suffer.
Indeed. Simon, thank you ever so much for joining us at such a late hour. Very quickly, Ellie, I mean, are you interested in geopolitics? Is that sort of your cup of tea?
Yeah, I am, but not as much as domestic politics.
Don't worry about your earpiece.
Yeah,
let's let that go. Only I need to hear the countdown. You just need to hear me. No, geopolitics is a brilliant thing. I think we should all, I think
it's so important as well.
Yeah.
And I think with Iran, I'm glad that now Trump has said that he'll actually do something about it, because he said help was on its way and never actually followed through with it. So it's good to hear that he is now actually, hopefully, action will be taken very soon.
There's nothing I like more when you think there's going to be a bombing raid, of going on Flight Tracker and looking at all the military assets moving around, and when some of them start going somewhere and then go dark over airspace.